related to bans. There's a litigation precedent here. Communities that have pursued outright prohibition, including voter-enacted bans, have faced sustained legal challenge, which we anticipate to be a years-long legal battle. There's takings and due process exposure. So takings and due process, a total permanent prohibition on a lawful use is far more vulnerable to a regulatory taking or a substantive due process claim than a use-specific standards-based ordinance, whether that is a standalone ordinance, a zoning ordinance, or a hybrid of the two. If you do a ban, there's loss of negotiating leverage. A ban would foreclose the city's opportunity to negotiate siting, size limits, buffers, water usage, water disposal, things of that nature, and community benefits. Those are tools that a standards-based ordinance preserves. And there also is a state preemption trend across the nation. Several states have moved to limit local authority over data center regulations. Iowa has not done so to date, but Iowa has specifically adopted incentives at the state level for data centers based on sizing. So there's information in the materials that you have been provided that are also available to the public through the agenda link related to the Iowa Code and the Iowa Department of Revenue information that is supplemental to the presentation. So from a legal standpoint, the recommendation is, rather than an outright ban, the recommendation to have a thoughtful, standards-based ordinance that gives the city real control and parameters for siting, size, utilities, infrastructure impact, and community impact, among other items. So as I mentioned, there are two regulatory approaches, or kind of a hybrid, combo, or blend approach. The first is a zoning ordinance amendment. So this would be a regulation done through the existing zoning code. You would add a definition for data center, and you would plunk it into the zoning areas where data centers would be permitted. It would apply the existing district standards for setbacks, height, lot coverage, so on and so forth. This would be the fastest and easiest to adopt because it builds on a code that we already have in existence. But as you know, our UDC is currently undergoing some updates and review and things of that nature, so we would have to coordinate that to make sure that it was consistent if that is the route you wanted to go. The second approach is a standalone data center ordinance. This is a dedicated chapter specific to data centers only, outside of the zoning code. It's a purpose-built standard and covers all of the things that you would anticipate to be covered that have come up in the community engagement: noise, water use, energy, decommissioning, community benefits, infrastructure. It can apply citywide regardless of the underlying zoning district. It's easier to update as technology evolves and more impacts are identified, and it's a best fit when data centers pose issues zoning codes don't address, because there's a number of things that zoning codes don't cover. And then, of course, the combo or the hybrid approach is to have a zoning trigger and some standalone standards within the Code of Ordinances. So the zoning code flags the use and sets a size threshold potentially that triggers review. So if certain parameters are met with a zoning application or submission, it would then get kicked into the data center specific ordinance provisions that would all have to be gone through, complied with, and worked out before it came back to zoning and possible siting within a particular zoned area of the community. So it lets you as a body calibrate the scrutiny to the project size if you want, small versus hyperscale type of data centers. And it is the most common approach among peer communities from what I have gathered in looking all across the country. Just so that everybody is on the same page when we talk about the types of data centers, there are 4 identified. This resource came from the University of Iowa College of Law. They talk about edge data centers, or small facilities that are close to end users. These sometimes are called micro data centers. You have enterprise data centers, sometimes referred to as small or medium. Those are built by a single organization. So think universities, hospitals, large manufacturers, things of that nature. You have co-location data centers. Those are built to house equipment for multiple customers. And the City of Dubuque's own data center is an example of a co-location data center. So it is the city's data center, but it has capacity to lease space to others for use. And then you have the hyperscale data centers, which are the very large data centers supporting massive computing needs, typically what you think of from major tech firms, your Amazons, Googles, Metas, and your Microsofts. So when you look at the peer ordinances across the nation, several of them have requirements related to facility size, whether that is square footage or a power draw threshold that separates routine server rooms that don't require any extra review from large or hyperscale facilities where in some cases they have to have a special exception for zoning purposes or a conditional use permit, or sometimes that combined with the standalone ordinance where you have a full standards-based review for whatever categories you all would prioritize from a standard standpoint. Now, when at the local level, so when I talk about peer communities, Lynn County is one of them that I've looked at, Clinton County, or the city of Clinton, among others. When Lynn County categorized them in their ordinance, small were considered 20 megawatts or less, using less than 50 gallons of water per minute. They categorized large as 20 megawatts, or greater than 20 megawatts, and using more than 50 gallons of water per minute. So that's just one example. There are others where they talk about the square footage, the physical size of the structure, but then they sometimes combine that with the draw for kilowatts of power. So there are a number of different ways that this can be tiered, but sizing small versus hyperscale seems to be the most common distinction that is drawn. Here are a sampling of how communities across the country have chosen to regulate data centers. So you can see that I have counties and cities. You can see that some have done zoning amendments, some moratoriums. There's a standalone chapter, a hybrid. Monterey Park, California had a ballot issue. One thing just to point out, Iowa law does not allow for a ballot issue. I've seen that as one of the questions that people have been putting forth, saying put this in front of the community for a vote. Iowa law does not allow that, so you all just need to know that up front. One thing to point out is that Eagan, Minnesota, they actually were sued after just doing a temporary moratorium, and that is still pending. Here are how communities across Iowa have handled data centers. So you see a hybrid, zoning, and moratorium. You can see the Lynn County, they did their ordinance back in February where they created a new zoning district for the large data centers or the hyperscale data centers. For the smaller scale data centers, they are just contained within a particular zoning classification, and then they follow standard zoning protocols that staff work through for the small data centers. Alameda County, you can see that they did micro and large, so micro are allowed in particularly zoned areas. The large are prohibited except as permitted by conditional use in particular districts, and they actually even had siting distance requirements, 5 miles between the small and 20 between the large. So you can see kind of some different variations and the type of things that you could consider for purposes of an ordinance. Here are some additional communities across Iowa, and you can see that some of them are still pending. Wapello County just had a work session last week, and I believe they intend to reconvene and have further discussion. And there are some where there are some moratoriums that are out just a little bit, where I believe there is an intent to have an ordinance in place before the moratoriums expire. There are a couple communities where moratoriums were short-term and they're about to expire, and they're talking about extending them because they're not ready to come back with an ordinance and they're still gathering data. So In looking at the research, the common themes and where the common themes came from, this is a sampling. I looked at information from the National League of Cities. They have a number of fact sheets available on data centers. The Urban Land Institute, which included local guidelines for data center development. The University of Iowa College of Law Hubble Environmental Law Initiative. They created an Iowa Data Center Decision Tool, which to help communities prepare for data center discussions. And then there was the Georgia Tech EPI Center Data Center Ordinance Hub, which was a comparative review of over 180 Georgia jurisdictions' land use standards and materials across the country based on the different types of regulations that have been put in place or considered. And then there's additional materials provided, whether those are model ordinances, articles, studies, things of that nature. The themes common to most ordinances relate to setbacks and buffer distances from residential uses and sensitive sites, water and energy consumption studies, disclosures and limits. Some of those studies are required after a period of time if a data center does locate in the community. So say after 1 year or 3 years or 5 years, another study has to be done to compare the information known at the beginning versus once it's operational and actual usage. Noise standards tied to nearby zoning districts, facade screening and aesthetic requirements, decommissioning and site restoration obligations in the event that a data center ceases to be operational in a community, and as I mentioned, size thresholds scaling the level of review. And at that point, I'm going to turn it over to Corey.
Thanks, Karna. Corey Burbach, Assistant City Manager. As the mayor mentioned, tonight's discussion is really building on several forms of community engagement that have happened already in the community. And so my job tonight is to summarize those as best I can. And the reason I'm smiling when I say that, in your packet and in the agenda materials for the public and the audience, you're going to find a fairly large file. It's over 100 pages. And in addition to the high-level summary that you're going to hear from me, you'll see a memo that's about 6 pages that digs into these topics in a little bit more detail. And then the thing that we have been telling staff, been telling the public every time staff gets a chance to talk to them, is it's really important for us that we don't become a barrier to them talking to you, because you're the policymakers. And so behind that memo, what you're going to see is over 100 pages of verbatim, all of the comments that we have collected through the survey that I'm going to talk about and through the in-person. So if someone is interested in digging into that, they're certainly welcome to. So as I mentioned, there are 2 different forms of engagement that staff have served as facilitators for so far on this topic. The first I'm going to describe is on the left-hand side of your screen. We developed a survey that was directly mailed to every residence in Dubuque. So that's about 31,000 pieces of mail that went out. That survey was also available online. And the intent in that survey was to be able to get a touch point where we could get some initial temperature gauges about where the community was at and ask about a few specific questions, but not make it so long that it was overwhelming for folks. So again, mailed to every residence and then also available online. What available online means is that both Dubuque residents and non-residents, anyone, anywhere, could reply to that survey. We had 3,777 total responses received. Of those, about 2,500 were online and about 1,200 were paper. And I'm going to dig into what those look like in the results in just a second. But the questions we asked residents to answer were, what are the most important topics a data center ordinance should address? And they were ranking those. We asked, as the city considers rules for future data centers, which potential benefits would be most important to you for us to negotiate in an agreement or in a document or law like Krena was just discussing? And then it asked them which statement best matches your current opinion. And here they had the choice: I would support a data center in Dubuque. I would support a data center if certain requirements were met. I would not, under any circumstance, support a data center, or I'm not sure and I would need more information. And then lastly on that survey, they had a chance to write in any specific feedback that they had. We also worked with staff to develop 2 roundtable discussions, and the intent in these discussions, this was really intentional community engagement, meant to dig into those 4 questions. Now we have a pulse on the community. Let's take this opportunity to dig into what specifically, so Krenna mentioned water, for instance. What specifically, resident, if you're interested in that topic, are you concerned about? What specifically could we do to mitigate those concerns? And the thing that I noticed, I had the chance to MC those events. One evening we had about 300 attendees, one evening we had about 100. We sat in tables of no more than 8 together, staff and residents, and we were able to workshop these ideas. So the questions that we asked in those roundtable discussions that were held in July were, what are the most important topics a data center ordinance should address, similar to the survey? And there were 2 rounds of that where we talked about it, and then I'll show you the results of a dot voting exercise. We did a deep dive into the topic that was of most interest to people, so everyone in the room got to pick the topic they were most interested in. And we asked questions around what specifically concerns you about this, and if the city were to develop an ordinance, what rules would make you feel more comfortable and protected? And then the last question that we asked residents to discuss was, what community benefits should the city consider or prioritize that would make you feel like there was value should a data center of some scale come to Dubuque? I want to recognize we had 50 staff in the room over those events, so we spread out and wanted the chance to get to really have discussion with people. I also want to recognize that I made several new friends those evenings that I see in the room, so I want to say thank you to all of the residents that showed up and really participated in that form of government. It was really a great learning opportunity for us over those evenings. The last thing I will recognize just about process is that we also did several targeted outreach where we were going to people, asking them to come to those roundtables. So in addition to social media, press releases, putting information in the city newsletter, we also did things like send a staff person to neighborhood association meetings, send a staff person to farmers market with a QR code so that everyone knew about the survey and the discussion. We hope everyone. And we tried to meet people where we were at so they were aware about how to engage. So again, I'm going to share with you very high-level results of what staff learned through those 2 tools. First, I'm going to talk about the survey results. So again, about 3,800 residents or non-residents responded to this survey. What you can see on the screen is based on the self-identifying information people provided, we had about 84% of the folks that participated in that survey lived within the city of Dubuque. We had about 13% that identified that they lived in Dubuque County, but not within city limits. We had about 2% that said they lived outside of the county, and then about 1.4% that did not answer that question. So we have had that question come up, and we know that stakeholders may be in or outside of the city limits, and we wanted to recognize that as much as we could. So then we asked which statement best matches your current opinion, and this data includes city residents as well as non-residents. So about 76% of the folks that responded to the survey indicated that they would not support a data center within the city of Dubuque. About 14% indicated that they would support a data center within the city of Dubuque with certain requirements. And again, in that data center, we didn't get, in the survey, we didn't get a chance to dive deeply into that question. About 7% said they were unsure, they needed more information before they could answer that question. And about 2.75% of the folks that responded to that survey said that they would support a data center within the city of Dubuque. The next question that we asked on the survey asked, what is the most important topic for you? So again, this was that ranking system on a scale of 1 to 7. And we asked them to rank each of these questions. So you can see that there are 3 kind of what I would say top runners that are really neck and neck before we see any break. And those are the 3 most important topics in the survey results were around power and energy use, water use, and environment. And I will note that if you have a chance to dig into the comments around environment, oftentimes that is gathering lots of things that show up elsewhere on the survey. So water quality, impact on humans, impact on animals, gets batched into environment. Then you can see kind of as they move down that scale until we get to traffic and roads, community benefits, and jobs were the items that showed up least often as being important to residents. There's some nuance in this bar chart. So again, you can see the biggest sections are in orange there. Those are the folks that said, so if I take power and energy, for example, 2,706 folks said that they would not support a data center under any circumstances, and that power and energy was the most important topic to them. In green, there's 467 folks in that bar. So those would be the folks that said they would support with certain requirements, and power and energy is their most important topic. And so you can see, again, we see that would not support bar being the largest, but you can see how it impacts the different topics as we move through this bar chart. We also asked the question in the survey of a list of potential benefits, what was the most important benefit that the city council should decision when thinking about the policy you may enact? And the item that came out on top is for council to consider how you could negotiate for improvements to roads, utilities, or other infrastructure that would be paid for by the data center owner. And again, if I think about the overlap between this presentation and Krenna's, when she talked about the different types of rules that you could enact and where you might have the authority to do that, that's where you may want to consider some of those things. The other two items that came up strongly here before we see a drop-off are consider funding for city services through property taxes that we would collect from a data center if it was within city limits. And then consider how we might require payments or community benefits that would be provided by the data center owner, whatever that might look like. This slide in and of itself has a lot of data to back it up within the documents that are attached to your agenda this evening. We asked that open-ended question, is there any other feedback that you would like to share? And so this uses some of our staff's talent and some software to analyze the comments to look for themes. We saw 43% of the folks that responded in their comments somehow say no data centers or ban data centers altogether. And then you can see as we move through here kind of where the comments break down within the survey. I'm going to shift now and talk a little bit about the roundtable results. And here, again, you'll be able to see in more detail the subtopics within category that people are interested in. We did ask folks to sign in when they showed up for our community engagement sessions. We did not require it. So again, we had about 400 folks attend over the 2 nights, some overlap in people that came back both nights. Of the folks that were willing to sign in, about 130 of those were City of Dubuque residents. About 54 of them were non-residents, and 38 put their name down but did not put any address information. That number does not add up to our 400, and that's because the other individuals chose not to sign in. So this format had a lot more flexibility to it in the types of comments we got back. The value in that survey that we just looked at the results of is we had 7 items we asked people to rank, and there was a very tight box that we could then do data analysis. The value of this type of engagement is that we're digging into, tell us what you're thinking, and whatever that looks like, but it looks a little bit different when we report out. So again, using software and staff analysis, these are the 8 topics that clearly came to the top in all of the conversation that happened at the tables over those 2 nights. And when I say clearly came to the top, there's 2 ways that we judged that. One is by looking at how many times it came up in the things people wrote down, counting. The other is that after the first round, we gave everyone attending 7 dots, and we asked them to walk around the room to flip charts and place dots where they were on the topics that were most important to them. So we used the dots as a counting tool as well. And these are the topics that came up as most important that evening. You'll see a lot of similarity between the survey and this, a little bit of shift in the order. So environmental impact, location and land use, noise and light pollution and its impact on humans as well as animals, Water use and quality, so here we're talking about both the water provided to the data center and then the wastewater product. Power and energy, jobs and economic benefits, ongoing monitoring and accountability. So this is a very big bucket, but it talks about some of the things Krenna mentioned, like doing environmental analysis before a center comes in, and then annual, and being able to compare it to a baseline. This also includes things like annual reporting and who has access to that information, what fines or fees might be in place if the data center did not comply, all of those kinds of things. And then 8 is about community process and transparency. And I would say it builds on 7, but it digs a little bit deeper and talks about things like who has access to that data in those audits, things like requiring non-disclosure agreements, and who would be able to dig through and query the data that is collected through those annual reporting mechanisms. So then we asked the residents that were in the room to be part of the creation process with us, should you all give the direction that we're going to develop some type of ordinance. We asked them, of those topics that are important to you, water, power and energy, roads, for instance, what types of rules should we consider putting into the ordinance that would make you feel more protected and make you feel like the community was getting value out of a business like this coming to town? So here we see 7 themes that specifically came up, and if you get the chance to dig into the comments, here's where you'll see residents and stakeholders who have done their homework and are citing, pull this from this ordinance, I'm interested in this topic. So here we see the 7 topics of having strict siting and zoning rules. So this could be everything from they belong in industrial parks only, to buffer zones, to how we might rezone farmland, for instance. The second category is around environmental protections, some of which we have already recognized. Third is around noise and light regulation, and here there was a lot of reference to existing US or world standards that we could pull from, like the World Health Organization or Dark Skies guidance. Fourth was around power and utility rules, and this is everything from how much you use to renewable energy to rates. Fifth, there were many suggestions around job and economic requirements that ranged from the data center employing local workers, permanent versus temporary, using local unions, those types of things. 6, we had a lot of specific recommendations around enforcement and accountability. So that could be, what are the teeth that we put in an ordinance should something go wrong? And then 7th was, how do we write in those community benefits that we have talked about? So things like making sure that any benefit that is available to the Dubuque community is shared equitably, but with priority for those that would most be affected. And here what we saw in the comments was with those living closest to a data center. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions at the end that dig into the details, but Krenna is going to bring you back to that policy-making lens.
All right, so direction that staff needs from you all. Is there going to be an ordinance? Yes or no? If there is, what option do you want to pursue? A moratorium, ban, standalone ordinance, zoning ordinance amendment, or a combo or a hybrid approach? What the scope of your decision is, if you choose a moratorium, for how long? If it's a standalone zoning or combined approach, should that regulation apply citywide, or do you want it limited to specific zoning districts? Sizing. If you choose to have sizing as a trigger mechanism, what size or utility usage do you want to trip that heightened level of scrutiny? And then timeline. We need to talk about a schedule, and that schedule will depend on the direction you all seek, and I've got some additional information on that on the next slide here. So, for example, if you chose a standalone zoning or a hybrid ordinance, here is an example timeline of what that could look like. So November 2nd, I would come back to you with a draft for you to discuss, review, provide feedback on. Would not be asking you to do any voting to move it forward at that point. It would simply be provide input, feedback. Did we cover everything you wanted covered? Does it need tweaked? Are there things missing? Are there things you don't like, you want removed or edited, right? And then would put that in front of the zoning commission for review and consideration, if applicable, because of course that would only be applicable if you were doing a piece where you were amending the zoning, the Unified Development Code. And then November 16th would be the target date for a first reading, December 7th, a second reading, and December 21st, final reading. And again, this was just me putting together an example to walk you through what a timeline might look like. If you opted to do a moratorium or a ban, that would be quicker because it is less intensive, because if we're doing a bigger ordinance, I'm going to need to work with staff on the logistics of those things and our subject matter experts. So with that, I think Corey and I can answer any questions you all have.
Right. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Krenna and Corey. We really appreciate it. We've got plenty of time for everyone to hear from all the members of the council, so we'll make sure that we give plenty of time for that. I'm going to kick us off with some thoughts, and you'll have to forgive me. I did write some things down here because it was easier to put my head around this when I wrote this down, and we definitely had plenty of time this weekend and before that to be able to dig into this a little more on our own and read everything that was here. First, a huge thank you to everybody who was a part of this process. To be able to provide this level of input in the way that you did was incredibly helpful for us to be able to make what I hope is going to be the best decision for Dubuque in this. We did it with civility, and I really appreciate that. I have to give a major shout out to Corey Burbach. She's not going to take credit for this, but she really was the brains behind putting the process together in this way, which I think was really effective. So Corey, thank you very much for what you did. And then Krenna and the legal team, obviously, always doing a lot of work, but on this one, a lot of work. And then all the city staff who spent extra time to go to the listening sessions, that's incredible to have staff that are that dedicated to show up and do that and work with everybody. So thank you to all of them. And then, of course, thank you to all of you who were at those sessions. Thank you to everybody who reached out to us and provided any sort of input at all. It was all very helpful to be able to read through and understand a little more where we are with this. I've actually had other mayors reach out to me and ask us, about Dubuque's process, because they were like, how are you guys pulling this off to do this process where this many people are providing input? So I think that speaks a lot to our community's level of collaboration and input in this whole process. So congratulations to everybody, and let's keep that productive conversation going. That's the other piece that I want to throw in there. All right. So give me a few minutes here. I got a few thoughts, but I'm going to begin by saying something very, very clearly. So there is absolutely no confusion about this. My personal interest in this particular subject is to do the right thing for the people of Dubuque now and the people of Dubuque in the future, generations to come. I am highly confident that that is the exact same situation for every member of the city council sitting here with me right now. Make no mistake about that. I just want to make that very, very clear, that our interest is in the people of Dubuque. I actually feel no sense of urgency at all to rush toward building data centers in our community. I feel no responsibility for, nor do I feel any allegiance to, any of the companies that are racing each other to advance artificial intelligence technology in our world right now. There are clearly some major benefits and advances that are available to humanity through artificial intelligence. You just can't argue with that. There are possibilities that are there that are major benefits. And if we're going to have a rational conversation about this, we have to acknowledge that fact. However, I need to take this opportunity to be able to say that I am growing increasingly concerned by the lack of safety regulations that these companies face as they race toward brand new technology that also has incredibly dangerous implications for our world, despite its obvious benefits. So in my opinion, the international community needs to very seriously and very quickly put guardrails in place that will ensure the safety of artificial intelligence in our world. This is the role of our federal government, and I'm asking them to hear that right now because I think it's very important. And I think they need to take it seriously. This is actually a global concern of grave concern. So I think that it's a very important point. But of course, the international implications of AI itself are not under our control as a city government. So that's not what we're here to discuss tonight. Our immediate issue before us tonight concerns the responsible construction of data centers within our community. There have been no data center proposals brought to the city of Dubuque to build a data center within the city of Dubuque city limits. Nobody in the city of Dubuque government is doing anything secretly to move data center proposal forward or outside of public's view. There's nothing like that happening, and I just want to make that very clear for everybody. There is no data center proposal being considered by the city of Dubuque, by this city council, or anybody else that works for the city of Dubuque. Realistically, there really isn't anywhere in the city of Dubuque currently for a hyperscale data center. There's just no real room for it at the size that they currently are right now. So within our city limits, there's no place large enough, there's no place flat enough, there's no place with enough access to power to be able to do that. So I want to make that clear too. The size implications here are something we need to continue to discuss because that's an important point. I think that's actually convenient in this moment because it's pretty clear to me from the responses that we got from everybody that the prevailing opinion in our community is to not have hyperscale data centers in the city of Dubuque. It's a pretty clear implication from what we just received from everybody. Now, I know some other cities in Iowa have already, they have hyperscale data centers already. They've got plans to move those forward. I want those cities to know, from me speaking as mayor, that I don't fault them for making that decision for themselves. That's their decision. I can understand why they've chosen it. There are actually some major financial benefits to having a data center in your community, and I can see why some cities would do that. And we can't have a rational discussion again about AI without talking about some of those benefits that exist for communities when you build something like this. And many communities in Iowa are facing very real financial challenges. We are not alone in that. We are actually facing some challenges of our own, thanks to changes in state legislation that have recently passed. Also, thanks to increased costs. Every single city is under some cost pressures, and that's something that we have to live with, and it's very real. However, if people resoundingly in our community do not want to pursue hyperscale data centers to solve financial challenges, then I don't see any reason to push for them. I think that we can simply find other ways, other paths forward to maintain fiscal responsibility. It's going to be challenging, but we can do that. So I just want to make that very clear too. So now to the immediate matter of the city data center ordinance that we're talking about tonight. I hear our city attorney and her team very, very clearly regarding the risks of an outright ban on such facilities. And I do not want to put Dubuque in a risky position of inviting lawsuits that challenge a ban like that. So in my assessment, I think it would be far more responsible for this council to create an ordinance that clearly and definitively emphasizes community benefit, community safety, ecological conservation, and also places all of the costs for any data center construction on the companies developing those centers themselves. We need an ordinance, even if we don't have room for hyperscale data centers right now, we need an ordinance in place for our own safety and our own security. We do have smaller places where smaller facilities could fit. And I think we need to talk about size a lot as we do this. There are major differences between the sizes of these different facilities, and we need to talk about what those are. So I think that a hybrid approach of a zoning trigger combined with standalone standards for data centers offers the most responsible, flexible approach for our city. So that's my idea currently, and I'm looking forward to hearing what everybody else has to say. Real quickly, on the question of a moratorium, I actually don't see a reason for one at this time, and the reason is this city council has made very, very clear that we will not consider any data center project without a full ordinance in place, and we stand by our word. That's plain and simple. So I don't think we need to do something extra other than develop this ordinance in a similar timeline to what our city attorney has laid out here. I think we have that capability to be able to do that. So I look forward to a thoughtful and thorough analysis of a data center ordinance in the next few months, hopefully, and an equally thoughtful and thorough continuing conversation about any data center construction in our city if it were to ever happen in the years ahead. So those are my thoughts to begin with. I open it up to anyone else who would like to jump in.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Resnick.
Ms. Brumwell, a few questions, please. So in your presentation, you mentioned about negotiating certain aspects of a data center, and that implies give and take. Wouldn't an ordinance be kind of a hard and fast thing? And we're not negotiating anything once we get an ordinance set, are we?
The ordinances that I have reviewed have references to things like economic development agreements in them. So we do economic development agreements currently for a number of projects, if a new manufacturer is going to come to town or if someone's going to develop new housing. So there is some back and forth in negotiating terms in some situations. But, for example, Lynn County, in the economic development agreement provision of their ordinance, includes in there that the entity would provide ongoing contributions to advance the county's fiscal infrastructure and community goals related to hosting data center facilities. The county retains full reasonable discretion to determine the form, structure, and use of funds or benefits provided by any economic development agreement. And in a minimum, the agreement provides for the creation of a community betterment fund or a similar mechanism to support public infrastructure services, environmental protection, so on and so forth. So I think really what they're talking about in those agreements is this conveying the standards that are in your ordinance and memorializing them in an agreement that someone acknowledges and signs. So it's not just an ordinance, like speeding is, speeding is on the books, you have to comply. In this scenario, it would be on the books, but there would also be this economic development agreement where the parties would acknowledge all of those requirements, they would commit to them, and then there would be some additional agreements as to what happens if they don't follow through, if there's a default, if they cure, or if there's a penalty, things of that nature.
But if those were just described in the ordinance particulars, or as the mayor suggests, that there is no kind of economic cooperation that, if they build this, they get so much, economic development funds. If they're simply on their own, and it just clearly says that, and the community benefit agreement is this, and it's all part of the, if it's all in there, there'll be very little give and take then, right?
The other bit to point out is that ordinance requirements, enforcement of those is rather formulaic by state code, whereas if you have an economic development agreement and it's signed by the parties, you have more flexibility for enforcement in district court, for example, for breach of contract and things of that nature. So you can have more teeth if you have an agreement in place in addition to ordinances.
Okay.
So I would envision that the ordinance would reference or include a requirement for an economic development agreement so that we could get that more expansive remedies for the city and its
Okay, two quick more
constituents.
questions, because others want to speak. So, but if we adopt an ordinance, a standalone ordinance, that doesn't in any way obligate us to do something. If some company says, here, we would do everything in this ordinance, are we obligated then to have that data center assign that? And we don't have any legal way to say, no, we'd rather, you're not the company we're looking for?
Well, for city property, sure. But
I'm sorry, sure what?
If it's city property, the city can always say no to someone who's interested in doing something on city property. Hands down, no questions about it. But if we have an ordinance and it involves private property and there's a willing seller and a willing purchaser and they're willing to comply with all of the requirements of the ordinance and enter into an economic development agreement with us, we could face a challenge if we said no and tried to kill a private deal.
So I'm glad we thought about that. Okay. And then finally, I can understand why 76% of the folks said they didn't want an ordinance, didn't want any data centers, because in my research, a lot of the data center owners challenged in court, they had this attitude of make me when they agreed to these points, and yet in these mandated compliance, and then they take those to court, which makes things a whole lot longer, and things that look black and white all of a sudden are in the courts, and who knows what happens then. So how could we deal with that possibility? If we think, hey, this is ironclad, is that really a possibility?
So what we would do in attempt to prevent that from happening, we could look at a couple different things. So for example, we could explore whether there's letters of credit or bonds or things of that nature, so that if someone is non-compliant, we could call a letter of credit. For entities like this, when they're financing and things like that, if you call a letter of credit, that is very damaging to any future business that they would do. It impacts their ability to get loans, to borrow, things of that nature. So we would explore remedies like that to broaden the scope of protections that are available in attempt to ensure that we have a credible entity that we are working with and that the citizens are going to get what's required by ordinance and agreement.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Wethel?
I watched a presentation that was given to the County Board of Supervisors last week. Great presentation, and spoke privately with Eric Schmeichel from Dubuque County Watershed about some of the details of it. So I appreciate everybody taking the time to put that together, but also Eric to speak with me. The question I have is related to impervious surface stormwater management, and maybe this is a Wally Wernimont question, but if that is part of something that we can, because the impervious surfaces are a very big issue in my understanding of the watershed and protecting our environment, making sure that we put that as a very specific piece of any ordinance that would be drafted, rather than just relying on the Unified Development Code. I'm hearing getting a head shake
So
from Molly.
when I mentioned that the timeline for coming to back to you was different if we did a hybrid ordinance or even the zoning or a standalone, it's because I need to convene with our water department, with our water resource and recovery center, with our zoning folks, with our stormwater staff in the engineering department, because they are the subject matter experts on which I will rely using all of this research and data to evaluate it and whittle it down to determine what is a best fit in bringing something back
Great.
to you. So yes,
Okay.
that is absolutely something that I would be consulting with them on and relying on them as the experts.
So one question I had is regarding the Iowa Utilities Commission, because how do we control, or do we have the ability to control writing in an ordinance language when the Iowa Utilities Commission regulates the rates and services of certain utilities and specific utility utilization and infrastructure? I have a lot of feedback about putting in restrictions on energy use, water use, but some of that is under the jurisdiction of the Iowa Utilities Commission. And so I want to be clear, we can say whatever we want in an ordinance, but it's not up to us, right? I mean, we can't actually regulate that.
There are going to be limitations. So, for example, you may not be able to specifically regulate X, but you could require that they provide the city data on it, so the city can see the impact of it, and then we can evaluate what that data does or does not do. What does it tell us, and does it allow us to do anything else about the specific impact that we are experiencing or not experiencing in the
Okay.
community? But as to the saying yes or no, that's where many of these lawsuits have started, is to a challenge saying, hey, city or county, you don't have the ability to regulate that because that is a utility commission function.
And a similar question, different line. Can we legally create an ordinance language that directs tax revenue? Because I hear a lot of people say divert the taxes to fire EMS, infrastructure. But do we really have control over that legally?
You want to chime in?
So the taxes are going to be according to state law. They'll be distributed based on the assessed value of the property. However, you can also require a payment in lieu of taxes, which then you have more authority to decide how that money is spent.
And that would be included in ordinance language, I
Yes,
would
it could be.
assume? Okay.
Yes, so that example that I was reading from, which was Lynn County, it indicates that they retained the ability specifically to direct that with the reasonable discretion to determine the form, structure, and use of the funds or benefit that comes out of any economic development agreement or community betterment agreement or fund.
Okay, thanks. I just have a few things I want to say then. I think you've answered all my questions. Or actually, you didn't answer all my questions. I just want to allow everybody time. So as a child, every time I opened a refrigerator door, my mom told me it cost 10 cents. And every time I walk out of a room, I was to shut off a light switch. And when I brush my teeth, I turn off the sink. And these are all things that I think I was taught as a kid, and I'm trying to teach my kids as it relates to caring for our resources. Whether they need to be restricted or not based on availability, I think it's just being a good steward of our land and our community. The Council Bluffs, so if you add up and start when I'm 5, add up my average kind of toothbrush washing water, I would estimate that to be, in my lifetime, I've saved about 32,000 gallons of water. The Council Bluffs Google Hyperscale Data Center, built in 2007, used 1.3 billion gallons of water in 2025. That's 3.5 million gallons per day, 148,000 gallons per hour. It's less than 10 minutes of my lifetime saving by toothbrushing. So, to me, that's unconscionable, and I understand that that's a older data center and that there is always developing technology that is going to make these data centers more, I guess, more thoughtful about their energy use and their water use. But that one's still going. Nobody's fixed that. And I'm sure maybe the people that are there look back and say, oh man, we should have maybe done something about that. Now, my understanding from the Iowa DNR is that maybe they have different availability of water resources in one area versus the other. And yes, we have the Jordan Aquifer, and that is wonderful, but we can't overutilize that. We must, it is a long time to build that up. And if that goes dry, we don't have the ability in my children's lifetime to restore it. And so I don't feel in any way, shape, or form that we can ignore that as a community. And so I think that I am probably in favor mostly of a combination of a hybrid approach with a zoning trigger. I personally would agree to a moratorium until we technically have an ordinance passed by council. I appreciate that we all up here keep our word on this, and I believe that to be true. I think that it would create a mutually agreed upon thing that developers would know about before they came to any member of the community asking to buy their land. And I want to be clear. Not only will I not support the sale of annexing farmland by the airport, I will fight it. And I have a real problem with the idea of annexing farmland to the city of Dubuque to build any sort of a hyperscale data center. I can't imagine any opportunity in which I would consider it. And so I want people to know out by the airport, there is no way, shape, or form that should be built. I don't care what ordinance we write. I don't care what we do moving forward, other than know that under any circumstance, that should never be built there. It just shouldn't, for the safety and well-being of all of us, specifically those who utilize the airport too. So I want to yield the rest of this time because I'm sorry I used what I did, but I want to continue this conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, hang on. We're glad you're happy. We don't do applause and booing or hissing or anything in here. So just please, just keep those claps to yourself. I do appreciate that. Yeah, please yourself.
Thank you. And I think my comments are very similar to what the mayor has said earlier. I think it's really important to protect ourselves, our residents, and our businesses now and in the future from the threats that have been identified. And a simple moratorium may not hold up in court, may be tied up in lengthy litigation. And generally, I'm speaking about hyperscale data centers. So let's be proactive and state what we will and will not allow, and what requirements must be met and followed in a special data center ordinance. A strong ordinance with clear requirements, I think, will be our best protection. It must be very clear to include terms from everything from beginning to end, everything from size and site to environmental monitoring and decommissioning and so much more. And as one resident said in the information we received, to make sure the developer pays the costs and the city reaps the benefits. And there are so many sample ordinances out there and great references included, especially in this agenda item. And since this is a national or global issue, we should certainly continue to look globally as we craft that approach. But I think of the three choices suggested, I would support the hybrid model with the zoning trigger where it allows the council to scrutinize the project size, and then our ordinance would clarify the details. So if a center should choose to look here at some point, they would know the hurdles that they have to achieve in order to be successful here. And if they choose not to meet our requests, they will look elsewhere. But I guess my question, having said those comments, in my mind, it pertains to the hyperscale data centers. The other ones, I mean, we already have some. For example, Krenner mentioned the city of Dubuque data center, or there are some small data centers in Dubuque. How do we differentiate when we are looking at this? It seems like two totally different sorts of issues to deal with. You know, looking at a small city or a small, maybe a hospital data center versus a hyperscale data center. I would like to learn more about what are these other three. Is this something we should be concerned about? I mean, if we already have some of these here, are there issues we should be concerned about?
I don't have an answer to that specific question, but what I can tell you is if the request is to bring something back to you, what I can do is provide a menu, if you will, of options related to sizing so that you all could consider and choose what level you would consider to require additional scrutiny.
So you could take that list of 4 and give us a chart of saying this type of data center is likely this size, and it would only trigger the ordinance if it reached the hyperscale size, something like
Whatever
that is
size.
possible?
Yeah, whatever size you all decided. Hyperscale or large does vary by community, but what I could do is I could give you examples from a number of different places with the definitions specific. We could try and put that in a chart, and so you could then say, here's where we're drawing the line, and here's what we consider to be hyperscale or large for Dubuque.
I think that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Mr. Sprank.
Thank you. How I look at this, I'm definitely no, since I know we've got short time, no on hyperscales, period. I would be in favor of a 1-year moratorium. In a nice way, that tells developers to go away for a while, but I would definitely like an ordinance that's like a hybrid option, and kind of my thoughts on an ordinance idea of try to condense it to like 11 things. One would be size. A smaller one, because that's probably what will happen in the future. In 10 years, these organizations are going to want to build something smaller. So my thoughts were size, something like 200,000 square feet. And you're like, oh, that's a lot. It's not as much as you think. When Hempstead High School is 276,000 square feet, the mall is 274,000 square feet. The Menards is about 162,000 square feet. Target's about 91,000 square feet, and Lowe's is about 133,000 square feet. So that's about the size of one, if I ever would see one. Definitely no incentives, no TIF, a closed loop water system, some type of solar, backup power, noise reduction, buffers, if we can figure out this power and utility rules at all. Definitely some type of community benefit, something similar to like how the DRA is designed, where that goes back into so much the community. Local labor to build it. And then finally, a decommission, because eventually this thing's going to want to be shut down, and it's just going to be a toxic, what are we going to do with all these computer parts? I don't want to be stuck with that. So those are my thoughts in a nutshell. I don't know how we can express that any better with our limited amount of time. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sprank. Mr. Landecker.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Well, I want to thank as well Corey and the staff for all the work that they put into this. It was really helpful in analyzing where the community is falling on this. And I think the data pretty much speaks for itself. And I think the data is tied to just the unknowns that we've talked about up here tonight of unknowing what does a data center mean to the environment, to the water, to the noise, to everything else that unfolds. And so I also think there's something that it's been on my mind since this topic came up however long ago, is I don't think the topography of Dubuque allows for a hyperscale data center, right? Now, it's been talked about that, and as Ms. Wethel brought up, is that, this annexing of land, and I don't see us ever doing that to bring in a data center into the city of Dubuque. And so, as I was thinking about, where I stood on this, I do think in short term, it's good to have a moratorium so we can understand kind of the nuances of what's going on in the environment, give us more time. I think as more time, data will become available that we can continue to make decisions on. But then a hybrid ordinance, I think, is prudent in making sure that we have that very well defined and to protect us. And I'm confident in the process that we're going about here in the dialogue. So I'm looking forward to getting stuff in place and moving forward. But like I said, I think a moratorium in the short term with a hybrid ordinance would be prudent. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Staver?
Yeah. I also want to thank Corey and staff and also the public for showing up and sharing all the information you have shared. It's been very useful and helpful. I did have a question for Corinna. So on the legal challenges you talked about for bans, other than obviously facing the legal challenge and the cost associated with that, have any of these AI actors been able to get into communities that banned them?
There is one pending right now in Tennessee where there was a resolution prohibiting data centers and cryptocurrency mining operations that was adopted. And the lawsuit alleges that in that particular instance, the company had already spent money and time preparing the facility and that they were going to lose roughly $120,000 a month in anticipated profits after the ban and the delay. So they were able to, at least in a petition, monetize damages resulting from a ban. It's not resolved yet. So I don't know how successful that argument is going to be, but they were able to put a dollar figure with it and say, city, or in this case, it was a county, here's how you have damaged us by adopting this ban.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think that's all, thanks. I think it's a complicated question. I mean, the devil's in the details, obviously, and things are changing. It's a moving target in some ways. I think a moratorium, would be a smart move, and I also think it would be important to come up with a hybrid ordinance and zoning that has some of the most restrictive language there is. So if somebody shows up and we're not a good target, that they know that they have some really big lifts to be in this community, that the benefits for the community will be massive, and the restrictions will also be massive. So I think best case scenario, we eliminate any chance of I think, like anything, especially technology, the size shrinks, but the output increases. So I think a square footage is maybe not a great way to look at it. I think we got to look at, the damages will be primarily, I think the big one is power usage and power companies looking out for their best interests and not our best interests. The water part of it sounds like there's, some obvious, correction already in that area. So I don't see that as big a risk as the power. Obviously, the environment would be a huge thing to look out for. So I think we got to be really careful about our sizing restrictions. I think we really focus on the power consumption part of it. And obviously, the idea of having what do you want to call it, penalties versus, fines. I mean, shutdowns. If you don't comply, you're shut down. I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. But also, I think some of these smaller, we really have to define the AI portion of this. These smaller ones are, might provide jobs and might be inconsequential. So I'm not worried about that so much as these really big ones, not in terms of size necessarily, but in terms of impact. So I think having a moratorium to get that well-defined, I think would be smart, and I think the hybrid would be, I agree on that, so, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, well, we all got a chance to speak our piece there. So what I heard is that we would like to consider a moratorium at our next meeting, please, on September 8th. So, please, Brenna, you're looking at me.
Time frame on a moratorium. I can write a moratorium. I need a time frame for it.
Okay, so in the next 2 minutes, I want to try to decide what we could do with that. So, Mr. Leindecker.
We can always extend the moratorium.
Correct.
Okay.
So how about you bring forward a 6-month moratorium for us with the possibility of extension, and we can talk about that. We can always change that at the next meeting. Let me just point that out. Like, we don't need to decide this right now. We can do whatever we want at the next meeting. So if you could bring forward the language, then we can actually address that at our next meeting on September 8th.
And if you, at that time, decided you wanted it longer, there could be an amendment to that, and we can process that as we do.
Yeah,
So,
we could. We could even potentially make that decision between now and then and have a different thing come forward to us on September 8th. So, based on community input, so we could do that. Okay. And then please, if you could create what I heard is the hybrid ordinance, bring something, begin working on that and bring that forward at some point. It looks like the timeline there is what you've got to work with, but we fully understand if that timeline is longer and if you need more time. As I pointed out, I don't think anybody here is feeling a rush to make sure that this is done, especially if we do establish a moratorium in the next couple of weeks. So whatever time this takes, let's do it right. That would be my suggestion. So I hope we can pull that off. Thank you very much for a very good discussion tonight. Everyone who's here, just a quick note. We need to start our next meeting in the next 2 to 3 minutes. So if you stand in the hallway, it's super loud. And so what I'm going to ask everybody to do is over the next few minutes, if you're not staying for the next meeting, if you could please make your way downstairs. It's a beautiful night outside. Go enjoy that. And then we appreciate you being here. If you are staying, please stick around. We'll start here in a few minutes. But there is no further business in this work session, so we are adjourned.
so you couldn't see like. Because I mean, it's a valley surrounding. I mean, it's a little short, okay.
Adrian Breitfelder, City Clerk, you are hereby directed to call a regular session of the City Council to be held on Monday, August 17th, 2026 at 6:30 p.m. in the historic Federal Building for the purpose of conducting such business that may properly come before the City Council.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to a regular session of the Dubuque City Council for August 17th, 2026. As a reminder to our participants, you can provide in-person input or virtual audio and written input during the sections of the agenda where public input is accepted. Input options during the live meeting include in-person attendees may approach the podium when the mayor asks if there is any public input on the item they would like to speak to. Remote attendees can log into GoToMeeting using the login links, phone numbers, and access code that appear on the broadcast and live stream and posted on the front page of the meeting agenda. This option includes audio input and written chat input. If you are participating via computer, indicate which item you would like to speak to in the chat function or note that you would like to speak during the appropriate section. If you are participating via phone, indicate which item you would like to speak to during the appropriate section. All comments, whether in person or virtual, must be accompanied by a name and address. Additionally, written public input is accepted by contacting the City Council directly from the city's webpage at www.cityofdubuque.org/councilcontacts and through the City Clerk's office email at ctyclerk@cityofdubuque.org. This information will be reiterated during the meeting. Attendance for the session is as follows. Mayor Kavanaugh.
Here.
Council members Leyendecker.
Here.
Resnick.
Here.
Roussel.
Here.
Sprank.
Here.
Staver.
Here.
Wethel. City Manager Van Milligan.
Here.
And City Attorney Brumwell.
Here.
Thank you, Mayor Kavanaugh. I'll turn it over to you for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Adrian. I invite all who are able to please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our proclamation this evening is Nathaniel and Charlotte Morgan Peace Week.
All right, I believe we have members of the Nathaniel Morgan Memorial Committee here to accept this proclamation. If you'd like to say a few words first, come on up and say hello, and then I can read the proclamation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ernestine Moss, and I'm co-chair of the Nathaniel Morgan Memorial Committee, along with Brian Kostoff.
Yes, hello, everyone. Thank you so much. We're very excited about where we're at in this process with the memorial and really grateful to all of you. Thank you, Adrian, for the work you've had in setting this up, and thank you, Mayor, for reading over multiple drafts, and thank you all council members for kind of supporting these efforts. We're generating some momentum. We've been at this since 2018, and we have good momentum going now and have a wonderful artist who I think is going to help us realize a real beautiful vision. So,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much for being here to accept this proclamation again this year. You have been doing some great work, and it's great to see so much momentum, so I'm really glad you're here tonight. City of Dubuque Proclamation. Whereas the City of Dubuque and local historians have committed to uncovering the history of all Dubuquers in an effort to tell a more complete story of Dubuque. And whereas Nathaniel and Charlotte Morgan were among the pioneers of Dubuque and contributed to its growth by working hard, purchasing the first platted lot, Lot 1, owning a home, supporting Dubuque's first Protestant church, and persevering in the face of racism as African Americans in a community that practiced slavery. And whereas the lynching of Nathaniel Morgan and the subsequent pardoning of the lynchers undermined the potential for interracial unity and peace. And whereas members of the Nathaniel Morgan Memorial Committee believe that confronting our past injustice leads to learning, teaching, and building an equitable and diverse community. And whereas the members of the NMMC have, after an extensive national search, hired artist James Dinn to complete a large public artwork to honor the lives of Nathaniel and Charlotte Morgan on the grounds of the future Dubuque Museum of Art campus. And whereas Dubuquers increasingly make a concerted effort in the face of ignorance, indifference, and racism to build an equitable and diverse community that honors the faith, aspirations, and perseverance of our earliest Black residents. And whereas the NMMC and other Dubuque residents maintain that in life, Nathaniel and Charlotte Morgan represented the promise of a unified and peaceful interracial community. And whereas the NMMC will celebrate this rekindled promise of unity and peace in a public memorial service on September 6th at 6 p.m. at Mount Carmel. Now therefore, I, Brad M. Kavanaugh, Mayor of the City of Dubuque, Iowa, on behalf of the City Council, staff, and residents of Dubuque, do hereby proclaim the first week of September as Nathaniel and Charlotte Morgan Peace Week. Come on up.
We will now move on to consent items. At this time, anyone participating in the meeting in person who would like to discuss one of the consent items, please approach the podium when the mayor asks if there is any in-person input and state your name and address. For all remote attendees, please enter your name and address in the chat function or state your name and address over the phone when the mayor asks if there's any virtual input. If more than one participant would like to speak, then city staff will determine the speaking order of the participants. Please state the item you would like removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion and consideration, and consent items can be found on pages 2 through 5 of the agenda.
All right, is there anyone here who would like to remove any of the consent items for separate discussion this evening? Please, come on up. And if you could just name your name, address, and then the item that you'd like to discuss.
My name is Austin Bowenhofer. I live at 119 West 23rd, and I would like to consent number 2.
Consent number 2. Okay. All right, thank you. You said Austin, right? Yep. All right, thank you very much, Austin. I'll call you back up here in a moment, okay? Anyone else? All right, back to us then for any other items. Mr. Sprank?
Number 5.
Number 5. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Resnick?
I move to receive and file the documents, adopt the resolutions, and deal with the consent items as recommended, except for number 2 and number 5.
Second by Wethel.
Got a motion by Resnick and a second by Wethel. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank.
Aye.
Staver.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Leindecker.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
That motion passes 7-0. Let's take number 2 first. I need a motion, please, to put this on the table.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Sprank?
I motion that we discuss item number 2.
Okay, there is a suggested disposition. Would you
No.
care to have that?
Receive and file, and I guess refer to the city attorney.
Second?
I've got a motion by Sprank and a second by Resnick to receive and file and refer to the city attorney. Austin, this is your opportunity to say what you'd like to discuss about this particular item, so you can come on back up to the podium there. And then just make sure you're right in the mic there so we can all hear you.
Good evening, members of the City Council. My name is Austin. I'm here tonight because my vehicle was damaged during a police raid at my neighbor's house. I want to make it clear that I was not involved in the situation that led to the raid. I was inside my own home, was asleep when this was happening. I had nothing to do with it or anything to do with my neighbor's house, yet my property was damaged as a result of the police operation. The damage to my vehicle was significant, and the cost of repairs is $3,310. I did not cause this, I did not participate in the incident, and I had no opportunity to prevent what happened. I understand police officers have a difficult job, and that sometimes they have to take actions to protect the public and enforce the law. I'm not here to blame the officers or argue about why the raid took place. I'm asking the city to recognize that an innocent neighbor should not be left to pay thousands of dollars for damage that occurred during an operation that had nothing to do with them. I was simply at home asleep when this happened, and I woke up to find my car was damaged.
Okay. All right, Austin, thank you very much for your comments. We do appreciate hearing from you. We have any discussion on this item? All right. Austin, thank you very much. That will be entered into the record, just so you know, that your comments will be there, so we appreciate you being here to provide those. Okay, motion here on this item number 2 is to receive and file, refer to the city attorney. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank.
Aye.
Staver.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Leindecker.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
That motion passes 7-0. Next up is number 5. Take a motion here, please.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Sprank?
I motion that we receive and file and approve.
Second by Wethel.
Got a motion by Sprank and a second by Wethel. Mr. Sprank?
Yeah, this is the REAP program, which I'm involved with, is basically we're looking at all of our parks, of course. And in that document discusses, of course, Eagle Point Park, and there's a plan to do work on it. There's also, the city manager sent us an email around 12:46 today, and there's a document. Mike, would you be willing to read that? The one, your memo that's, it's the Word document memo about the conditions, about all what's going on at Eagle Point Park, because it kind of ties into the whole REAP project.
Please, Mike, yeah, go ahead.
So this is a memo from Parks and Recreation Director Matt Kalsevich, dated today. It says, this memo is to provide information related to evolving projects and improvements at Eagle Point Park and the actions being taken and planned for the continued effort to improve access and to the quality of activity at the park. Eagle Point Park continues to be a topic of discussion in the community and amongst Parks and Recreation Department staff. It's one of the largest parks managed by Dubuque's Park and Recreation. It includes an extensive and diverse list of responsibilities and tasks on a daily, weekly, and annual basis. Currently, Eagle Point is one of only 3 parks, the others being the Bee Branch and a staff that rotates between Flora and Murphy, where staff are assigned directly to that location for its care. With 2 full-time staff and 3 available temporary positions during the summer, some of whom end their service around the middle of August, but we attempt to have them commit through October, available to support the care of the park. There are some challenges keeping up with this very healthy and complicated system of features and spaces. The remaining more than 50-plus parks in the city are maintained by the other members of the park's maintenance team, made up of 9 other full-time staff and several temporary positions. On February 16, 2026, the City Council approved and adopted the Dubuque Parks and Recreation Comprehensive Master Plan. As a result, Eagle Point Park was reclassified as a regional park. This signified that it was a space that could be considered for future additional support because of the complex nature of its layout and its reputation as not just a place for residents, but those from around the tri-state area and beyond. Much work has happened in the first half of the summer, with the addition of a second full-time staff member going into this season. Activity continues to be high with regular rentals of facilities and other traditional daily activities that fill the capacity of staff. In the fall of 2025, Parks and Recreation staff combined with Public Works to perform multiple projects, and those included repairs and replacement of one sidewalk and repairs to the asphalt parking lots and roads, the removal of some trees and stumps located near the road, and to open better access to several features of the park, including some open-air shelters. Volunteers helped with the cleanup in several locations of the park. This included branches, trash, and pulling weeds. A significant number of other projects are currently either actively being worked on or in preparation to begin the work in the near future. Funding has been dedicated by City Council to most of these items. Tennis court renovations, $302,000. This project will focus on crack sealing and resurfacing of the courts. The estimated amount of this project has activated a process to hire an engineering firm to identify the specifications for the work. We are pursuing an opportunity of partnership with the United States Tennis Association and our local representative to access services they provide to partners like us for such technical support. If that does not produce the right connection, we will administer our regular process for soliciting support from a qualified firm. Eagle Point Park Master Plan, $165,000. This is a direct action identified in the Dubuque Parks and Recreation Comprehensive Master Plan and is the next major step in evaluating what the full scope of care at this park could look like and strategies about how to support that effort. The development of an RFP, or request for proposals, for this project is underway. With the recent request for proposals, the Comprehensive Parks and Recreation Master Plan is a template. There is active discussion with staff about the scope of the work that will be requested. We will also invite other city departments to offer us perspective on that scope of work. with the final document then proceeding to City Council for approval. That is targeted to be out by mid-fall of 2026. Tree trimming and bluff clearing, $114,000. An initial attempt to solicit services to provide clearing on the bluff was not successful. The outreach for finding the right contractor partner is being expanded, and staff have reached out to other agencies for any referrals about if and how similar projects they have managed were supported and successful. Some tree clearing was done recently along the bluff by the city forestry team, but the other work will require a contractor with the right equipment and manpower. Shiras Pavilion renovation, $97,000. There is need to address structural issues with the building as well as improve features of the space. This project is targeted to happen during this off-season while the park is closed. Stonework and tuck pointing, $91,000. Several facilities and structures are in need of this kind of work. A single project is being set up to incorporate all of these into a request for proposals to be awarded, ideally, to a single contractor. This project is targeted to happen during this off-season while the park is closed. The timing of this work may be impacted by the Jeffress grant process, which the city is pursuing to support the additional historic structure improvement currently being evaluated. Veranda room roof replacement, $51,000. A terrace room roof replacement, which is $40,000. These roofs sustain damage and have been a challenge to address structurally. Due to the historic preservation status of the buildings at Eagle Point Park, some additional items of review are also part of the scope. The timeline for this work is still pending. Sidewalk repairs, $83,000. Several locations are in need of this kind of work. A single project is being set up to incorporate all of these into a request for proposals to be awarded, ideally, to a single contractor. This project is targeted to happen during this season while the park is closed. The log cabin, $71,000. There is need to address some structural issues with the building as well as improve some features of the space. More research is required to fully identify the scope of the work. That effort will be targeted for this off-season while the park is closed. This total list of investments in the park totals over $1 million and includes a tremendous amount of staff time and work behind the scenes to prepare for these projects to happen and ensure they are done properly and with the most benefit to the park. In addition, there are several potential partnership opportunities, efforts to include volunteer groups to expand support for the park. Staff are coordinating with the newly formed Friends of Dubuque Parks for an event on August 29th, as well as multiple other prospective groups that would help make an impact on overall care. In addition to these projects, the Parks Division has started discussions about specific work days at the park in the next few weeks to lend support to the full-time staff to help reset spaces that have surpassed the capabilities of that team. There are also items being added to a list of work to be performed while the park is closed, as well as items to improve and add as part of next season. The staff, along with myself, and this is Matt, who wrote the memo, are excited to move these projects forward and create the right plan for the future. Eagle Point Park is a special place that we support seeing reaching a new level of care while maintaining the high-level support for our total park system. Now, that's the memo. I will add that he mentions the grant process with the Jeffress Foundation. So in June, the mayor and city council approved us applying for a grant from the Jeffress Foundation. And in the memo I just described, that was over $1 million of work that's going to happen at the Eagle Point Park. So in addition to that, there is, let me look for the number in here. So there will be about $2 million, which is part of this grant application that we're making to the Jeffress Foundation. Apparently, in their program, they're willing to fund about $750,000 of that, assuming the city can raise through philanthropic efforts the other 2/3 of that $2 million. And so we are moving ahead with that fundraising campaign. And so In addition to the over $1 million that I just described that'll be spent over, mostly over this winter, this would be a project that would happen in 2 years, which is about $2 million. Now, we won't hear from the Jeffers Foundation till the end of this week, whether we received their 1/3 match, but all the indications we've received from them up to this point are very positive. You can only apply to them if they invite you to apply, and they did invite us to apply. So that's a pretty good sign that we probably got a good chance of getting that grant.
Okay. Before I come back to you, Mr. Sprank, I just want to make sure that everybody knows what, because Mr. Sprank found a very adept workaround, I think, for something that came up today. So the memo that Mike just read, and then I'm going to ask Krenna for some guidance on here for some public input. But the memo that Mike just read was actually something that I requested from Matt Kalsevich for our goal setting next week. So we have goal setting starting on Monday and Tuesday and then ending on Thursday next week. A lot of you might know that. And that's where we set our priorities for every single year and decide what's going to happen and that kind of thing. So that memo was, I actually requested, I believe, on Friday, if I'm not mistaken, or it might have been over the weekend. I'm not sure on that detail, but it's one of those days, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. And Matt Kalsevich worked on that and was able to get that to the council today and through Mike. So we have that in our possession. It's going to be posted on the goal setting agenda for Monday's goal setting. So I've asked Adrian as our city clerk to do that. So that's the reason that is not part of this particular item, because this particular item doesn't actually specifically have to do with some of the things that Mike was reading in his memo, but it does, REAP funding does have to do with Eagle Point Park. I hope that's clear. Probably not very clear, but that's what's going on here. It's why you haven't seen the memo that Mike just read. But you did get to hear it, and I do want to make sure that we make it public as soon as possible. So my first question, Adrian, is how fast can we post that on our website to make sure that people have that for the goal setting from Monday night, to be able to see that memo?
Yeah, and that can be posted on the city's website tomorrow. The goal setting agendas were going to be published Friday. I think we were still waiting for some materials from the facilitator to confirm that.
Mm-hmm.
But until that time, we can post that somewhere else on the city's website and then include it when those agendas are ready to be posted.
Okay. Yeah, I would appreciate that, and I think everybody would, so we can make sure that everybody has access to that. My next question is, I know a lot of people are here to talk about Eagle Point Park this evening. Would this be an appropriate time to provide some public input on this particular item, Krenna? Or are we outside the bounds with the REAP funding situation?
Being that it's limited to REAP, I think it would convolute the two when they should be held separate.
Okay. All right. Well, then that I think explained, or I think that kind of covers my next question then. So what I'm going to do is we're going to need to continue to move through, and then we'll welcome public input when the public input time does come a little bit later in the session. It shouldn't take us too long to get there based on what we have on the agenda. Anything else specific to REAP funding? Mr. Sprank, do you have anything further? Okay. All right. Then let's keep moving. So we've got a motion here to receive and file and approve. So Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank.
Aye.
Staver.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Leindecker.
Aye.
Kavanaugh. Roussel.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
We'll move on to items set for public hearing. We have two. First is grant of easement to Holy Family Catholic Schools, Dubuque, Iowa, for September 8th, 2026. And second is setting public hearing for consenting to the renewal of operating line of credit between the Dubuque Racing Association LTD and Nicollet National Bank for September 8th, 2026.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr.
I move to receive and file, adopt the resolutions, and set the public hearings for September 8th.
Second by Wethel.
Got a motion by Roussel, second by Wethel. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank.
Aye.
Staver.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Leindecker.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
That motion passes 7-0.
We'll move on to boards and commissions. We have application review for the Airport Commission and Housing Commission and appointments for the Community Development Advisory Commission and Transit Advisory Board.
All right. So our first commission here is the Airport Commission. Here we have two openings. They're both four-year terms that run through 2030. We have 4 applicants at this time. So the first applicant is Michael Finnan. Do we have anyone here to speak to this application this evening? Seeing no one here. Okay, anyone virtually?
No input.
All right, then our next applicant is Michael Phillips. Do we have anyone to speak to that application this evening? No one here for that one, nothing virtually, okay. Next applicant, Molly Grover. I believe I saw Ms. Grover. Yes, would you like to speak to your application, Molly?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, City Manager Van Milligan, Assistant City Manager Corey Burbach, the attorney, City Attorney Corinna Brumwell, and of course, the City Clerk, Adrian Breitfelder. Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here. First off, I want to thank you for your consideration of my application to serve on the Airport Commission. Air service has long been a priority of the Dubuque Area Chamber of Commerce in my 20 years here from day one, and I've always had genuine interest on serving on the Airport Commission. I wasn't eligible until 2 years ago when I moved into the city of Dubuque, and that opportunity has arisen, hence the reason for my application. I believe air service is not just an airport priority, it's a regional economic development priority. It strengthens our employers, it strengthens workforce recruitment and retention, it expands tourism opportunities, it encourages economic investment, it grows our population, and air service infrastructure is so important to the future of our community. We know what it looks like when infrastructure has been missed. The interstate system missed us in the 1950s, and we didn't have four-lane connection into our community until the year 2000. Air service is really critical to access to the global marketplace. That's important from an economic standpoint. It's important to everyone from a quality of life standpoint. It's an expected amenity in today's 21st century global economy. We have students and families that depend on getting to our wonderful institutions of higher education. We have people that want to visit extended families. We have employers that don't just do business here, but they do business not just on a national scale, but on a global scale. I believe air service is one of the defining priorities of our economy now, and as we look ahead to the future. It would be a great honor to serve on the Airport Commission, and I thank you for your consideration of my application. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly, for your comments. Anyone else to speak to Ms. Grover's application? All right, and the final applicant is Matthew Moore. Do we have anyone to speak to that application, please?
Evening, folks. I'll just keep it short. Try to shorten the introduction portion. My name is Matt Moore, 560 Sunset Ridge. Thanks for hearing my application. It gave me an opportunity to look back at my logbook. I took my first flight at the Dubuque Airport on September 4th of 1997. I'm a graduate of University of Dubuque aviation program. I'm currently an airline pilot for a major airline based in Chicago. I have over 12,000 hours of accident-free airline service. I've worked in many different facets and I've fueled aircraft. I've been a flight instructor since 2000, 26 years as a flight instructor. I have a seaplane rating. I was a cargo, I worked for UPS in St. Louis as a ramp supervisor, leading a team of 25 people loading cargo planes at night. I interned at TWA. I'm in the airport every week. I'm in the air system every week. You talk about subject matter experts earlier, I feel like I fit that description, being that my job, my livelihood, all my training is revolving around airports and flying. I do work as a pilot, you work in a collaborative environment. Every day you meet new people, you deal with new situations, every flight is different, every situation is different. I've been able to meet all those challenges so far without any issue, I knock on wood. But I have a strong background in the aviation. I have National Flight Instructor, different organizations, AOPA, National Flight Instructor, Seaplane Pilot Association. So my background and a lot of the talk I do at work, obviously, is aviation related. So I have a lot of friends, a lot of colleagues that are also in similar roles throughout the country. And I can draw on a pretty vast amount of experience from not only my background, but the people that I work with's background in issues that are, affecting our air service. Essentially, like we talked about, the air service was a very high priority for the city of Dubuque. Unfortunately, we talked about the essential air service has been shut down, and to get that going on a federal level is obviously going to be the most important thing we do going forward, try to get air service back into Dubuque. Our own efforts came up a little bit short, but my goal to getting on the commission would be to have a strong aviation community. UD is currently 450 students, going to 700 students. That's a big aspect of the airport and the operations we need to focus on. In addition, opening up again on the federal level essential air service to get scheduled service back in Dubuque, which would also benefit me to get me to Chicago to work. That would be helpful instead of driving every week. I would appreciate that. So just being from Dubuque, I have roots here. I had the opportunity earlier this year of that proposed data center situation out by the airport, and I was able to speak in the citizenry aspect of it, rating some of the dangers of putting that in that position. So I'm already being an advocate for the airport, even in just a regular citizen role, and I'd like just to continue that work that I started. I kind of got a little taste of it, and just to continue that work in more of an official aspect. So thanks for your consideration. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt, for your comments. Anyone else to speak to Matt's application? All right. Moving on then to the Housing Commission. We have one 3-year term through August 17th, 2029. Here we have one applicant, Amy Udaly. Do we have anyone here to speak to Amy's application? Seeing no one here, nothing virtually. Okay. Then that brings us to board and commission appointments. Here we have the Community Development Advisory Commission. We have one 3-year term through 2023, and this is specific. As you'll see on there, it is a low to moderate income representative. We have one 3-year term through February of 29. This is a vacant at-large term. So let's take the first term first, please, and you'll notice we have one applicant who would qualify. So I'd entertain a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Roussel?
I move to appoint Rakita Fisher to the Community Development Advisory Commission for a 1-year term for the vacant low moderate income rep term.
Second by Sprank.
All right, and it's a term through 2028, just to clarify there, not a 1-year term. So we have got motion by Roussel, second by Sprank. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank.
Aye.
Staver.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Liondecker.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
That motion passes 7-0. Next, we have one 3-year term through 2029. I'll take a motion here, please.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Sprank?
I motion that we nominate Paul Uzel for the at-large for 1 year to 2020 to February 15th, 2029.
Second by Wethel.
Motion by Sprank, second by Wethel. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank.
Aye.
Staver.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Liondecker.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
That motion passes 7-0. Transit Advisory Board, we have 3-year terms through July 30th, 2029. In this case, we have 3 applicants, so I would entertain a motion of all 3 applicants at the same time if anyone would care to do that. Otherwise, we can do these one at a time.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Roussel?
I move to nominate Marilyn Cole, Greg Orwell, and Dora Cerna to a 3-year term through July 30th, 2029 for the Transit Advisory Board.
Second.
Got a motion by Roussel, second by Resnick. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank.
Aye.
Staver.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Liondecker.
Aye.
Kavanaugh. Roussel.
Aye.
That motion passes 7-0.
We will now move on to public hearings. At this time, anyone participating in the meeting in person who would like to discuss one of the public hearing items, please approach the podium when the mayor asks if there is any in-person input for the public hearing you would like to speak to and state your name and address. For all remote attendees, please enter your name and address in the chat function and state your question or state your name and address over the phone when the mayor asks if there is any virtual input for the public hearing you would like to speak to. If more than one participant would like to speak, then city staff will determine the speaking order of the participants. Public hearing number 1 is Wacker Plaza Planned Unit Development Amendment.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Roussel?
I move to receive and file And further move that the requirement that a proposed ordinance be considered and voted on for passage at 2 council meetings prior to the meeting at which it is to be finally passed be suspended.
Second by Wethel.
Motion by Rousseau, second by Wethel. Wally, please.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Felicia's going to pull up the presentation on the screens. There it is, okay. The request before you tonight is to amend the Wacker Plaza Plan Unit Development, which has a commercial plan unit designation covering it, to update the signage, parking requirements in the conceptual development plan. This is a map of the property. The area or the PUD boundaries are identified with the blue outline. And then we have the black hashed outline areas. The main focus of the amendment with regards to adding of a drive-through and bank ATM location. We do notify all property owners inside the planned unit development and everyone within 200 feet of the property, so that was done based on our Unified Development Code and state law. A little background history. This area prior to 1989 was zoned business, and then 1989 the Wacker Plaza Planned Unit Development was adopted. And in 2005, we had an amendment to the signage area requirements that pertain to freestanding signage. The site is actually comprised of 2 parcels that total approximately 6 acres. And the PUD has nearly halved in size since inception. So a large portion of this PUD used to be where you see now the Collins Community Credit Union, where Shopko used to be located. That's under a separate PUD now. So this area is just focused on the boundaries that you see here shaded in purple. So the existing conceptual development plan reflects the existing property extent, so there are no new buildings being proposed here with the exception of the drive-through, because the drive-through was not shown on the conceptual development plan. It is an amendment to that plan that had to go through the process, the Zoning Advisory Commission, and now before you here at the City Council level with regards to that. When we looked at the conceptual development plan, it also provides an opportunity to update some of the existing zoning ordinance that's associated with it. And we're looking at, for instance, we had a signage amendment to it. That'll be the next slide when we talk about it, but this is in regards to parking. When we look at parking, there's constant changes of a mixed use. It's a multi-tenant business. And when we looked at having the standard parking requirement, we're looking at 1 space per 250 square feet of floor area accessible to the public. That would just equate to 218 spaces being required with the current building layout. However, the site currently provides 287 off-street parking spaces, and that includes the amendment, even with the bank and drive-through that's being proposed at the location. However, a developer could propose more parking in the future, but I'm basically saying it is complying with parking, and there's more parking that needs to be needed. We're just making it a little bit more clear in the planned unit development. With regards to the signage requirement, we're looking at an opportunity to update that just to incorporate that 2005 amendment. What happened typically in the past was we'd have the original ordinance, then we'd have a separate document that was an amendment. So when we'd have realtors, appraisers, banks would contact us, anyone associated with purchasing or developing, we'd have to pull 2 ordinances out. I like to try to combine that all in one real easy ordinance, and we provide an ordinance history in there. The other thing is with regards to the signage requirements, the proposal is to add the bold text, as you see there, to be a little bit more clear on the total amount of signage allowed on the site. It was very unclear with regards to, it says wall signage is limited to 2 square feet of wall signage per each linear foot of facade frontage, and it's like, what facades, right? So we ran this by the property owner, and we had conversation to be very clear what we're talking about, and just helps clear up some of that gray area, make it more black and white in the future on the ordinance. We did not receive any public input with regards to the request. So at that public meeting, Cody Weaver, who's the with Civil Engineering Consultants, spoke on behalf of the property owner. He stated that they were seeking to add a bank with a drive-up ATM to the building located on Building C, which I'll show you here once again is the area outlined in red. We did take this to our development review team, so our engineering department, building, fire, water, and planning departments have all reviewed this from that standpoint. Do not see any issues with the traffic flow and the removal of the off-street parking and everything associated with it. So that preliminary approval, we like to do that for planned unit developments before they come before you, as opposed to getting something approved and find out it doesn't meet our standards with that. So the representative is here available tonight if you guys have any questions, but by a vote of 5-0, the Zoning Advisory Commission recommends that the City Council approve all of the proposed planned unit amendment, and a simple majority vote is needed for City Council to approve the request. And that's all I have unless you guys have any questions.
All right, thank you very much, Wally. Well, we're here tonight in a public hearing to consider a Wacker Plaza Planned Unit Development Amendment as outlined there by Mr. Wernemont. Do we have any public input on this item this evening? Seeing none here. Anything virtually?
No input.
All right. Okay, back to us then. Any discussion or questions? I'm seeing and hearing none. Motion here is to receive and file and waive the 3 readings. Thank you, Wally. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank.
Aye.
Staver.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Leindecker.
Aye.
Kavanaugh. Roussel.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Russell?
I move final consideration and passage of the ordinance.
Second by Wethel.
Motion by Russell, second by Wethel. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank.
Aye.
Staver.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Leindecker.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Public hearing number 2 is approving an amended and restated lease agreement by and between the City of Dubuque, Iowa and RG Hospitality LLC.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Sprank.
I motion that we receive and file and adopt the resolution.
Second by Wethel.
Got a motion by Sprank and a second by Wethel. Mike, please.
Thank you. Economic Development Director Jill Connors is recommending City Council adopt attached resolution approving the amended and restated lease agreement by and between the City of Dubuque and RG Hospitality LLC. City staff informed RG Hospitality LLC that the city would consider a lease extension if substantial investment in the property was proposed. After discussions and negotiations, the parties have developed an amended and restated lease agreement with the following key elements. Number 1, a 50-year lease, September 1, 2026 through August 31, 2076. Number 2, lessee must invest approximately $9.5 million in building improvements, equipment, furniture, and fixtures. Number 3, redevelopment to a Radisson Hotel brand, including meeting their standards, improvements to the outer deck, renovated water park, arcade, the restaurant bar, conference rooms, and 193 rooms and suites. Number 4, construction to begin by September 1st, 2026, and substantial completion by September 1st, 2028. Number 5, initial base rent for the land, $94,486.12 in the first year with an annual escalator of 3%. Number 6, after completion of the 25th month of this lease, and if exclusive parking is elected, an additional $95,136.22 a year is due in addition to the base rent. And number 7, 10 years of tax increment financing rebates provided by the city. I would mention that this RG Hospitality LLC is a subsidiary or associated with, would probably be a better word, the Riddle Jewelry Store chain, who also has a jewelry store here at Kennedy Mall. And we have met with the Choice Hotel corporate representatives, and that's Radisson Hotel is a Choice Hotel product, and they advise that the Riddles own and operate an award-winning Choice Hotel property in South Dakota. I concur with the recommendation and respectfully request Mayor and City Council approval.
All right, thank you, Mike. We're in a public hearing to consider approving an amended and restated lease agreement by and between the City of Dubuque, Iowa and RG Hospitality LLC. Do we have anyone here in chambers to address us on this item? Seeing no one here. Anyone virtually?
I have 2. The first is David Westergaard is available from RG Hospitality. He says to answer questions, but David, I'll ask if you want to address the council.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, members of the City Council. I am absolutely excited to join you tonight. I joined you back in January when you transferred the amended lease to us. We have about 8 months under our belt now and are even more excited to be a part of the Dubuque community. And we are excited that our projects are going to be kicking off here. We are on the cusp of improvements to the water park, remodels to the room, the lobby, adding some really, I think, pretty cool amenities that our guests will really enjoy. And our team has spent a fair amount of time at the property and certainly have visited extensively with guests and gotten some feedback from them of what they would love to see. And we are incorporating a lot of those amenities into the property. So certainly would welcome any questions, comments, concerns that anyone has.
All right, well, thank you very much, David, for your comments. We'll see if there's any other public input, and then if any of us have any questions for you, we'll be sure to direct them your way. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, any other public, you said there's one more, sorry.
The second is Jimmy Evans from Choice Hotels.
Okay. Go ahead, Jimmy.
Good evening, everybody. Good to see some of you again. When I was back there in January, and the gentleman that spoke, I believe it was Dave, not Dave, the Development Commission gentleman. He and I had met, and he had kind of stole some of my thunder. But I just wanted to jump on real quick. We are thrilled to be in partnership again with the Riddle Group and RG Hospitality there in Dubuque. We've been in business with the Riddle Group for over 20 years. First being a Comfort Inn built in Rapid City, South Dakota, which was the property of the year, I think the second year after opening. They've since sold that property, but the gentleman also alluded to their K-Bar S Lodge, which is a Ascend Collection boutique hotel in Rapid City, South Dakota. That's been a real gem for us. It's consistently a top performer. It's currently under an expansion and renovation, which is going very well, and was awarded the highest honor for the Ascend Collection in 2025, and it won a Platinum Award, which is the best property, both quality-wise and performance-wise. I think we're blessed to be part of it with the Radisson brand. They've been very engaged, meeting their milestones and on track to start their renovation here in September. Can't wait to see how that all turns out. But I just wanted to give everybody a vote of confidence in the Riddle Group to perform, both at delivering a quality product and a well-performing asset to the city of Dubuque and that banner location right there on the pier. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Jimmy, for your comments. Thank you for being here. Any other public input on this item? Okay, please.
Uh, 1072 Main Street, David Downs. I guess the question for the council would be, why a 50-year lease? That just seems it's going to outlive all of us in this room, and then some. That's just my question.
Thank you very much for your question. All right, any others? All right, back then to us for any discussion. Yes, Ms. Rousseau.
Number 3 says redevelopment to Radisson Hotel, bringing it up to their standards. Will they have ongoing standards that they need to continue to meet? I know that in past years, our hotel has maybe not been up to the standards we would have liked it to be. Will this help us ensure that we continue to have a quality product?
So we have the right to do our own inspections to make sure we believe they're keeping a quality property, but also we know that the Choice Hotels holds them to certain standards also. Economic Development Director Jill Connors, I believe, is here and may have something she wants to add to that.
Yeah, good evening. Jill Connors, Economic Development Director, and thanks for that question. We do have in the development agreement a stipulation that they have to have at least annual reviews from the Radisson brand and to stay to their standards. So that that review, that audit will happen by the brand in order for them to keep that brand name.
Good. Sure. Thank you.
Other comments, questions?
I can speak to that. This is Jimmy Evans from Choice Hotels.
Yeah, Jimmy.
Yeah, we have rigorous standards that are not only in electronic form, but one-on-one site visits with our operational support twice a year, and we're watching and keeping them on pace for a quality product.
All right, thank you, Jimmy. Yeah,
Mr. Mayor, Mike, City Manager Jill, can you address the lease term that was questioned?
So if you wouldn't mind, if we could ask Mr. Westergaard to address that from the RG Hospitality?
Yeah, great.
Because this was their request, was a 50-year lease. I will point out that the original hotel had a 45-year lease. And at that time, the developer's position was to get a return on their substantial investment. But anyway, I'll let Mr. Westergaard address that.
I think the biggest thing of why we were driving for a 50-year lease term is, we have some resources certainly to put into the hotel from our own account, but we are borrowing a fair sum from a bank out of Nebraska. And when a property is on a ground lease, what we have seen with most banks, they get a little bit nervous about that process if it's not a extended period of time. So that 50-year term was really at the request of our financial institution, just to make sure that they have, that lease in place to make sure that their collateral is secure for an extended period of time, even past the loan expiration.
Thank you, David. Anything else?
Yep.
Mr. Lyndon?
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, and I think this is a good time to point out that one of the reasons that we're even talking about a lease is that we don't sell the general standard for the city council for years now, and we've generally kept this, is we don't sell riverfront property. We lease it. It belongs to the people of Dubuque, and we want to keep it that way, but then also make sure that as we do so, there is a return coming back on that. So the last few years, we've talked about the riverfront leases that were there for various industries that are there, making sure that the city of Dubuque is getting paid better for those. But then also, in this particular case, the question of this hotel is a unique one. We've talked about the length of the lease in multiple different conversations in this room and just in public in general. And there's a lot of numbers that are thrown around for the length of a lease. And I think, honestly, a 50-year lease in this particular case, I think, is a good deal for both parties. I think that we heard from Mr. Westergaard as to the reason why. And I think that for the city of Dubuque, it's actually potentially less than some other leases in some other cities in a similar type of property. So I think we're in a pretty good situation. And I will say that this entire process in working with RG Hospitality so far has been very, very good. They've been very upfront with us. They've worked with us very clearly. It's been, I think, a good collaborative conversation so far about a very important property. So I'm very excited to be able to see this all moving forward, and glad that we are at this point where we can put this on paper and then get moving so we can start to see those improvements take place. Anything further? Okay. Well, thanks for the input for everybody, from everyone. Thank you very much, Jill, for answering some questions there. Motion here is to receive and file and adopt the resolution. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank.
Aye.
Staver.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Leindecker.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Roussel.
That motion passes 7-0.
Public hearing number 3 is petition to vacate Lot 25B of Block 11, Dubuque Downtown Plaza in the city of Dubuque, Iowa for vacating petition, Northeast Iowa Community College Building Entrance Improvements Project.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Roussel.
I move to receive and file and adopt the resolution.
Second by Wethel.
Resolutions.
We caught the S on the end. Thank you, Ms. Roussel. Second from Ms. Wethel. All right, Mike, please.
Thank you. City Engineer Gus Sahoyas is recommending City Council adopt a resolution approving the vacation and disposal of city interest in the right-of-way property described as Lot 25B of Block 11, Dubuque Downtown Plaza, as part of the Northeast Iowa Community College's construction of its proposed building entrance site improvements at 700 Main Street. I concur with the recommendation and respectfully request Mayor and City Council approval.
All right, thank you, Mike. We are on a public hearing to discuss the petition to vacate related to this Northeast Iowa Community College Building Entrance Improvement Project. Do we have any public input on this item? Seeing nothing here. Anything virtually? No. All right. Anything from us? Seeing and hearing nothing. Motion here is to receive and file and adopt the 2 resolutions. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank.
Aye.
Staver.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Leindecker.
Aye.
Kavanaugh. Roussel.
Aye.
That motion passes 7-0.
Public hearing number 4 is JFK Water Tower Interior Piping and Expansion Joint Replacement Project. Conduct public hearing and approve bidding documents.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Wethel.
I move to receive and file and adopt the resolution.
Second.
Motion by Wethel, second by Resnick. Mike, please.
Thank you. Water Department Director Chris Lester is recommending City Council adopt the resolution approving the plans, specifications, form of contract, an estimated construction cost amount of $60,000 for the JFK Tower interior piping and expansion joint replacement project. The proposed contract estimate is above the fiscal year 27 expense budget, which has a current available expense value of $50,000. Coverage for expenses overages anticipated to come from the Water Storage Rehabilitation Program, Capital Improvement Program, which is also being used for the dry tank cleaning and inspections activities being conducted at the JFK tank in coordination with this project. It has a current available construction expense value of $25,000 that can be utilized for this purpose. I concur with the recommendation and respectfully request Mayor and City Council approval.
Thank you, Mike. We're in a public hearing to discuss the JFK Water Tower piping and expansion joint replacement project. Any input on this item this evening? Nobody wants to talk water towers? Anyone virtually?
No input.
All right, back to us for any discussion. Seeing and hearing none. Motion here is to receive and file, adopt the resolution. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank.
Aye.
Staver.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Leyendecker.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
That motion passes 7-0.
Next is public input. At this time, anyone participating in the meeting may address the City Council on the action items on the agenda or on matters under the control of the City Council. For all in-person attendees, please approach the podium and state your name and address when the mayor asks if there is any in-person input. For all remote attendees, please enter your name and address in the chat function or state your name and address over the phone when the mayor asks if there is any virtual input. If more than one participant would like to speak, then city staff will determine the speaking order of the participants. Individual remarks are limited to 5 minutes, and the overall public input period is limited to 30 minutes. Under the Iowa Open Meetings Law, the City Council can take no formal action on comments given during public input or that do not relate to the action items on the agenda.
All right, thank you, Adrian. All right, so I know we've got public input, so come on up, whoever wants to go first. If you would like to provide input and you're waiting, I'd ask that you please line up over here on the side of the room. A couple of things. We're gonna try to hold it to around 30 minutes. I'll wiggle a little bit on that. We can go a little bit longer. But I would ask that you please keep your neighbors in mind. Try to keep that 5-minute limit. So do your best. I'm gonna call it out when we hit 5 minutes if you're there. I'll try to do so respectfully. So yeah, please.
City Council, city staff, my name is George Davis. I've lived at 120 South Grandview, just south of the Highway 20 Grandview overpass for 31 years. I served on the Dubuque School Board years ago and helped prioritize funding for school activity facilities, which had become dilapidated and many of which in an embarrassing state. One of the things that pushed us over the edge to do work on our facilities at the high school was several high schools refused to run on our track because of how bad our 6-lane track was. We only had a 6-lane track at Dalzell Field, and several of the lanes were dangerous to run in, and schools refused to run in them. So that was kind of the impetus to get Dalzell Field done, and then the swimming pool and improvements at Hempstead and many other improvements. And you folks are in somewhat of a similar situation with many dilapidated, loved public facilities. I maintained the overpass plantings on Grandview and Fremont overpasses of Highway 20 for 20 years, raised money for the plantings on flower beds on Grandview Avenue for 15 years, have done maintenance work on the flower beds and the medians in front of my house for many years. And I was married on the back entrance of Eagle Point Park. I'm also currently on the Conservation Board, which maintains many of our county recreation areas. The city and we in Dubuque have referred to ourselves for many years as the masterpiece on the Mississippi. I don't think that moniker really applies anymore for a number of reasons, which I'll illuminate. Rob McDonald's has documented the current embarrassing, depredated state of Eagle Point Park. It's going to take much more than the $2 million that was talked about earlier to restore this, one of the most things that our community has the most pride in to the way it was 30 years ago. In addition, every street and roadway in the city of Dubuque is littered with debris, weeds, unwanted trees, and trash. I don't understand why we can't do the simple things, why we can't get rid of the stumps, why we can't pick up the trash, why we can't maintain these roadways. In addition to Eagle Point Park, the median on Grandview Avenue has been in a long decline of dilapidation, as are most of our parks. Our city properties are filled with thousands and thousands of dead and dying, intrusive trees that overlap onto the roadway. If you go down Grandview and follow a bus, you'll see them brushing up against all the trees along the way. In the current state of maintenance of the community's public property, I no longer believe the moniker masterpiece on the Mississippi applies, and I would propose the following proposal. I would propose the city discontinue the use of the phrase masterpiece on the Mississippi until our public parks, roadways, and other city-owned areas are brought back to their formal level of maintenance, repair, and glory. I would say cover the signs, remove the moniker from our webpage and our letterhead, and discontinue its use. This could be a unifying and rallying point for our community as we seek to restore the status of masterpiece on the Mississippi to our community. Further, it would provide incentive for people, individuals, and businesses to bring their properties to a higher level of care. I therefore ask the City Council to put a moratorium, if you will, on the use of masterpiece on the Mississippi until such time as we can rightfully and justifiably claim the status. If any of you would like to take a tour through the city of Dubuque and look at some of these dilapidated and uncared for areas, I would be personally willing to do that. And I've offered that to many of you in the past. Just reach out to me and I'll be happy to drive you around. I know it becomes, in the movie Field of Dreams, they said, it's money they have, it's peace they lack. Well, we have the money in the city of Dubuque. It's the will to do these repairs that is lacking. And now that some of these things have gotten so bad, just like the track at Dalzell Field, perhaps you can find the courage to move forward on improving many of these areas. I'd like to thank the city employees for what they do and thank the council for your service. And please reach out to me. I'd be glad to take you on a tour and show you what I see. Thank you.
George, for your comments. Just for reference, that was exactly 5 minutes, just so people know.
My name is Carl Stiglitz. I live at 533 Lowell Street, Dubuque, Iowa, 52001. Mr. Mayor, City Council, and City Manager, I come tonight in support of community efforts to see Eagle Point Park return to its former glory. Eagle Point Park has been allowed to sink into a rather sad state of disrepair. This is a crying shame. Back in the day when our family moved to Dubuque in 1994, the park was beautiful and renowned across the entire United States of America as one of the best municipal parks in the entire country. It was a wonderful place to visit. It has served our community well, and many a graduation, birthday, and other celebration party has been held there, including one of our own daughters. Please return our park to its original beauty and make the maintenance and upkeep of the facility a priority once again. It just seems that the city's focus has moved from maintaining and sustaining what we have to forever seeking something new, and resources have shifted to providing for a different demographic rather than sustaining regular service to the majority of our taxpaying community. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Carl, for the comments. Carl, sorry.
My name is William Meyer. I live at 1856 Romberg. I'm going to reiterate the same fact that I think Eagle Point Park should be a budget priority. And what I have with me is one of the more recent copies of the 365 Inc. magazine. I'm sure you all, if you haven't seen it, they're at local businesses around town. They promote things that are going on in Dubuque. And we've just had a lot of interesting things happening with the Field of Dreams, RAGBRAI and stuff. And this is something from Travel Dubuque Incorporated, which is traveldubuque.com, is filled with pages of great events, but these are the places and experiences that are always here to be discovered. They defined our community and should be at the top of every visitor's to-do list. Obviously, the Field of Dreams and the National Mississippi Rivers Museum and Aquarium. Right there is Eagle Point Park in there. And I'll leave this here for a copy if everyone would like to see it. I definitely think Eagle Point Park should be made a budget priority, and I thank you for the efforts that you're doing, and I just think that more needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Leonard, for comments. Could you set that actually on the desk right there so Corey can take it? Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Greg Farber. My address is 22616 Starview Drive. When I was a child, my parents took my sisters and I to Eagle Point Park to see the view and the beauty of it. That was the early 80s. Today, it's nothing like that. I took my son, Jax, who's 6 years old, to Eagle Point Park approximately about 3 months ago. And my son said to me, after about 15 minutes being there, "Dad, can we leave? There's no kids here to play with." And the reason why there's no kids there to play with, look at it. What is there to do? Oh, the splash pad that was there back when I was a child in the early 80s. Asbury Park has a great splash pad. Comiskey Park has a great splash pad. Eagle Point Park has one that's 50 years old, 40, 50, whatever it is. Now let's move on to the trees. The view that Eagle Point has or had is still there. I own GNR Tree Service in Dubuque with Ron Youthy. We have a contract with the city of Dubuque for tree removal. We have the insurance and the experience to remove these trees from this view, either by crane or helicopter. Yes, you heard me correct, crane or helicopter. We have experience at both. My question for the city manager is, why are you looking for a business out of the city to do this job when you have GNR Tree Service, a local business under contract with the city of Dubuque for tree removal that can do this project? Can you answer that question, please?
We actually aren't allowed to answer questions during public.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
I'm going to end this with this statement. When I purchased 22616 Starview Drive, my dad said to me, "Greg, there are only so much property up and down the river that has a view like you have, and you have it now. You are one lucky man." The city of Dubuque could have a great view like I have, like they did years ago. You too are lucky like I am, like my dad said. My suggestion is to make this a priority, to change Eagle Point Park, put it back to where it was when I was young, when I was a kid, so my son can grow up and see the greatness of the park that it was years ago. Any questions for me?
No, we're good. We just take input. So thank you
All right,
very much
thank you.
for your input. We appreciate that.
Good evening. My name's Maria McDonald, 1125 Highland Place. Quick background, I grew up on Eagle Point Drive. I played tennis at 5 years old on those courts that are now an eyesore and extremely dangerous. I do live in Texas, but I've maintained a home here for 25 years, as well as some other properties I pay taxes on. The Eagle Point Park website says it is the crown of the Dubuque Park system. I'm curious the state of the other parks, and I hear there are some 50 parks, which blew my mind.
hang on one second. I'm sorry, Maria. I'd ask for please no noises or laughter or disruption. Let's just let people make their comments. We're listening politely. We'll continue to do so and take notes and make sure we take that forward with us. I'm sorry to interrupt, but thank you.
I'm just curious of the state of the other some 50 parks that I have been told are actually in this town, if this is how we're managing our crown. There are years of debris that is staggering in that park. In one word, what came to me was unkept. And I know that's not really a word that's used very often, so I'm just going to define it. Not maintained, not cared for, messy, disheveled, untidy, neglected. And speaking of neglect, of course, I already mentioned the tennis courts. I will not play on those tennis courts. They are extremely dangerous. And I play tennis and pickleball, and Flora is no better. So I'm thrilled to hear that that's going to be taken care of. When I have friends come visit here, I, without a doubt, have got to take them to Eagle Point Park. It's part of my story. It's part of who I am. I will find myself apologizing through the park and telling them how it used to be. Sad, yet accurate, unkept, hits the nail on the head. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Maria, for your comments.
For the tall person in the room. Hello, I'm Nino Urba. I live on 180 West 15th Street, apartment 306. And before I start my inquiry, I just have one very simple question. Will the real Rob McDonald please stand up?
Nino, please don't refer to other people in the room. Thank you.
I did not think so. So my inquiry. I happened to stumble upon the TH this morning, and there's a story about how the EPA and the city of Dubuque is collaborating together to clean up the brownfield sites in Dubuque, and I'm very encouraged about that, but my inquiry is that this stuff takes time. It's going to take years to clean up these sites because that's just the nature of the work and the nature of how fast the federal government runs, and I feel that as part of how we can collaborate as fully as a city, that the city of Dubuque should participate in sessions that we just did with the data center, that we can take input from the community to figure out what to do with these brown sites, because as much as I know that the city has a tendency to jump to development and business and all that sort of stuff, some of that land might be too toxic, even after the cleanup, to put new business on there, and it's going to be a struggle to figure out how clean those areas are going to be. So I recommend that you look into things like solar fields or tree orchards or anything that can provide a benefit to the city that doesn't actively put people at risk because of how toxic these sites are. So I just think that it's a pretty good observation to look at how toxic these sites are and figure out what the best path forward is. Thank you.
Thank you, Nino, for your comments.
That's easier. Good evening, Catherine Sorensen, 2613 Jackson. I'm not going to talk about Eagle Point Park, but I am going to talk about the parks. Because as the city of Dubuque, you are responsible for the condition, or your department is responsible for the condition of all these parks. At this moment, you're a slumlord. You mow the lawn and nothing else. Period. Park across the street, I don't know, it's kept a little bit better. Jackson Park, you need to get out there with a trimmer. They don't know that there's a curbside to the sidewalk. They don't know that there's a street gutter. There's weeds growing around in the street gutters around a city park. On my way here, Comiskey was mowed. 24th Avenue looks great. Jackson doesn't. There's weeds coming up out of the sewer. They weren't touched. The curbside wasn't touched. 25th Avenue, I think, is in competition with all the properties on White Street that don't know there's a street gutter and that there's a curbside to do. All the grass clippings on all three sides of that park are all the way around the sidewalk. Do we not own a blower? Do we not have a crew? This is management. This is management of your employees. If you're short-staffed at your job, if I'm short-staffed at my job, I'm expecting to find supervisors, extra help. My management team's going to come down. They're not going to sit behind a desk in an office or go to a meeting. If you need 3 people to do a park in one day, it shouldn't happen. A park can be done by 3 to maybe 5 people within an hour. This is pure neglect from the top on down. No one's going out and verifying what they're doing. No one's checking behind them. That's obvious with Comiskey. Today, on my way here, with all the social media stuff that's going on, that's blatant. That's outright a slap in the face to any citizen here, not including what has happened for decades at Eagle Point Park. Since this big meeting's coming up, I'll throw out 5 flags again. I will throw out Grand River again. There are needs that need to be met. Your escalators at Grand River have not been working for 5 years. There's 2 companies from the city of Chicago that are able to help maintain it and keep it leveled. That should be a yearly maintenance problem. That should not be going on and not being taken care of. It should be handled every single year. Understand something. If it settles one more time the wrong way and those elevators go out, you're not in ADA compliance. And they won't be able to host events because you have to be in ADA compliance to get people up to the 2nd floor of that building. Same thing with 5 Flags. They don't come asking for much, but you've told them no for every single year. Are you aware that there's a heating issue in the theater lobby? No. They need some help. That theater lobby floor needs to be leveled out somehow so people don't go downhill or basically trip. You're ignoring it year after year after year. That, in my opinion, with the parks, Eagle Point Park and Grand River and 5 Flags, classifies you under a slumlord. I know it doesn't sound right, but there's no other way to put it because that's what they do. They ignore the problems until somebody comes to them and says, hey, we have a problem. Oh, just so everyone knows, you might want to work on Grand River. There are approximately 1,700 people that will be here the week of September 1st between Grand River and 5 Flags. If you really want to put on a good show, that's when you want to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine, for your comments.
Good evening, Mayor and council members, and City Manager. My name's Karen Rakuzik. I live at 14248 Augusta Court, so I'm part of Dubuque County. I'm here just to talk a little bit about Eagle Point Park and that I consider, and I guess I'd term it as mission critical. And it should be a top priority. We shouldn't have to be asking this to be a top priority, but please make it a top priority. Somehow find a way to reorganize your budget to support the plan to resurrect it. I don't think that we necessarily need to always rely on a foundation for a grant. You've got very willing taxpayers in this city and county to pay for all the services and amenities that we have and utilize. And I'd like to bring forward a new suggestion tonight. In our, I'd like to see us engage our neighborhood watch associations. Our neighborhood associations, especially where we have neighborhood parks. We have approximately, I believe, 31 parks peppered throughout the city. Now, I'm not talking Eagle Point Park, Murphy, Allison Henders. These are the small parks, the little satellite parks, if you want to call them that. I'd like to see us be able to solicit homeowners within those communities that we would engage them to help maintain those neighborhood parks. And then provide them with a tax exemption. Call it a community exemption on their property taxes to incentivize someone to come forward, volunteer, and take ownership of those parks and take care of them and keep them beautified. They are the ones that are utilizing them the most. And I think they'd appreciate keeping their own neighborhoods beautified. They'd be a dedicated point of contact for any major concerns that that park would have, so you'd have firsthand feedback. And also, I think, lastly, I'd like to add, is that to free up resources that you have dedicated, and I believe I heard you have 9 full-time employees set aside to handle these neighborhood parks. Now, I'm not sure quite how that works, but 9. You could free up those resources and reallocate them to Eagle Point Park. That's what I would do if I managed the park. That's what I would do. And then also there's part-timers. And we could have part-timers do that as well. But like I said, create some sort of a tax exemption for these employees or people that would not an employee, they wouldn't draw benefits, they wouldn't have any of those extra perks, but they would take interest in their own communities, maybe even more so. So in closing, I guess I'd like to say, please don't be critical of our input. We feel that everyone in this room, you may be critical of because we come forward, maybe not. But I feel that there's been criticism made because we are speaking up. And we might be just mere feeble citizens that, who are simply concerned over a very deteriorating city park, Eagle Point Park. I too am very proud of that park. 52 years ago, I had my first date with my husband there, and we're still married. So it's very dear to my heart. And I think it's our duty, it's our responsibility to really care for and take the best care of God's gift to us, because we have it here. You look up and down this river, and you don't see that. And we have it, and we're letting it go to waste. And also, I think, lastly, I said lastly once, but I'll say it one more time, we need to honor the hundreds of unemployed men that came forward in the mid-30s on the WPA program. If maybe some of you have grandfathers that worked that, and that they put their sweat and blood and sometimes their lives into creating that park, building those buildings, creating those shelters, forming that park to what it is today. And we have let it go to waste. And so we're all here to hear, and we're very eager to hear your response. And I know you can't respond tonight, but we certainly look forward to next week when you finalize your budget or make your first pass at it. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
All right, Karen, thank you for your comments. All right, if we could try to finish up by 5:10 after. You can look at the clock in the back there, if we could, for whoever's left. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Members of the council and city staff, my name is Phil Levos. I live at 980 South Grandview. I'm not a Dubuquer. I came here 5 years ago when I met my wife in college in Nebraska. I've been around the Midwest, lived in a couple different cities, different states, made Dubuque my home. I have the privilege of being George Davis's son-in-law. I've helped him on a number of these improvement projects on the green space of South Grandview over the years. In my day job, I manage a team that's responsible for around $270 million annual budget, so we're just a little bit larger than the city of Dubuque revenue budget, but I like to think that when it comes to great responsibility, right, you have great opportunities. I know it's a catchy saying from a movie and a TV series, but it's true. You have the power to do great things in your seats, and what a number of these citizens have come to talk about is what we want to see. There's a saying too that you become what you tolerate, right? It's not what you promise. It's not what you say at a ribbon cutting. It's not what you potentially put in a budget sometimes, but it's what you repeatedly allow. So it's a very uncomfortable question. But what are we becoming? When you see things like what have been mentioned in the state of Eagle Point Park and some of our green spaces in Dubuque, that sets a precedent of a culture. What do you want your neighbors? I mean, I love where I live on South Grandview. I love that my neighbors take care of their yards. I'm very proud of what my house looks like. But it is discouraging when you look in the middle of the street and see what that looks like. It's discouraging when you go to your parks and see what they look like. Does that set a tone for how citizens and homeowners and landlords throughout Dubuque, landlord myself, treat their properties as well? And so ask yourself, when you think about the course that you want to set, think about what you're tolerating things that we really shouldn't be tolerating as a city. So that's what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you. And was it Billy? I'm sorry.
It's Phil.
Phil,
Levos.
thank you,
Yep.
Phil. Thank you for your comments.
Hello, my name is Mary Lynn. I live at 2069 Avalon. And I just want to say, as a citizen, it really is mind-blowing how the park got the way it did. And I feel guilty because a few years back I tried to get things going, but I don't hold a high position or have a lot of people in my circle to get things rolling. So when I heard about this, the people getting together, I jumped on board. So now that we're here, I'm happy to say I did like Matt, the manager, has planned. But now we got to get the funds. Where are we going to get the funds? Please maybe stop building new parks and other things until we get this park fixed. I think I read there's another aquatics in the works. So that would be my first priority, to put Eagle Point at the top of the list until that is well done. Now, friends of Eagle Point Park and people volunteering, that's all good and said and done. But we know you're going to need skilled workers that do roofing, masonry, and concrete, and construction people and contractors with license. So I please hope you post those jobs to the people of the city of Dubuque so they can have first crack at applying to help fix this park. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, for your comments.
Good evening, Council, Mayor, Mike. Mike Hoskins, 3052 Westmore, Dubuque, Iowa. I'm going to be short. I'm going to say it real simple. You all saw Rob McDonald's videos. It's an embarrassment what we have allowed this park to become, and it's on all of you. You guys are the ones that set the priorities. I hear what Mike talked about in the millions of dollars that are currently allocated. Is it going to happen, or is it rhetoric? Because I really don't know. So I hear a lot of rhetoric that comes out of boards and out of councils. I just retired from the school district. I took my classes because we don't have a gym. I had Mike's grandson in my classes. We'd go to the parks, try to play outside yard games. Springtime, Eagle Point Park, disrepair, unusable. A.Y. McDonald Park, grass up to my calf. I called the Parks Department twice to get it cut. Once they cut it, you could bale hay on it. Gay Park, the same situation. What you people are doing is non-action. It's unacceptable, and it needs to fix. That's why elections happen and new people are elected if you can't get your jobs done. Thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, Mike, for your comments.
Leonard Dress, 541 Groveland Place. I lived in Dubuque all my life. I go back to 1966 when I used to ride my bike up to Eagle Point Park, go to the kids' pond, the band shelter, looking over the river, all over that park, just riding through, us young kids did back then. And now we're talking, I believe I heard we're going to take a parking lot and we're going to make it a pocket park, but keep 6 parking places there. So we'll be building a bigger multi-story parking ramp. I think leave that parking lot space there for people to park. And the money that was going to be spent on that, let's take that to Eagle Point Park. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Leonard, for your comments. All right, I think we can take 2 more. I see 2 more lined up, so come on over.
Good evening. My name's Jeff Small. I live at 13924 Surrey Lane. Born and raised in Dubuque. Left in the mid-'80s for almost 40 years, moved back in 2020. Visited Eagle Point Park 2 times. And I guess after the second time, it was just disappointing. It's been a while since I've driven through it. I do like the newfound attention to the park. And all I really want to say is, number one, I appreciate you all listening to everybody tonight. I'm sure it gets tiring. It's hard to do, but I think the bell's been rung where you understand there's a lot of attention now to the condition of the park. Please use your leadership positions to make something happen. You all have a leadership position, so you take those positions because you do want to make some action, take some action to make things better. So I think every one of you wants to make things better in Dubuque. Please put some focus on Eagle Point Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, for your comments.
1072 Main Street, David Downs again. Long story short, I own LMA downtown. Saturday lunch, Sunday lunch, people come in all the time and always ask what to do if it's at Third Museum already, they come in and grab food. And here's my little spiel I would say. 2 doors down, go to the bookstore, check out, even if you don't read, see what's on the shelves, just cool, see what's going on. Society, it's fun. 4th Street elevator, check out La Venta, go to the Irish store, I'm Irish. Again, it's just a lot of fun. La Venta's great coffee, Daniel and Natalie. Eagle Point Park is something I always say to people all the time. I haven't been there in a long time myself, so I went there on Saturday. And it definitely needs work, so I'd like to see it a budgeted priority for the next budget. But there's definitely some stuff there that looks fun there, but there's definitely a lot of that missing stuff, the splash pads, some stuff. But I think it's definitely something everyone's aware of and we can do together to get it better. So make it a priority in the budget. And then my biggest complaint right now at Eagle Point Park is actually when you walk in or when you drive in the front, the park information spot right there, it just, too much grass. Like your initial look should be your best look forward. And that right there is just the first thing is right there. I don't need to walk around and show you the picture. I'm sure you can go to Eagle Point Park yourself and look at it, but I took a picture and just like, I can't believe that that's the first initial thing. Some of the play structures look great. The buildings are rough. The view's not there. But I think everyone here wants to fix it together, and hopefully we can make that happen in 2027 budget. Make it a top priority. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Evan, for your comments. Well, thank you, everybody, for your comments. We do appreciate it. And thank you for taking the time to be here, taking the time to do this in the civil fashion that you did. It's definitely appreciated, so we appreciate you being here. If you are planning to leave, we just ask that you do so quietly and then head straight downstairs. Don't hang out there right outside the door because we can hear everything that's said. If you want to stick around, feel free. We've got some more work to do, so we can definitely do that. So thank you for being here.
And Mr. Mayor, I will just note for the record that Jill Panko, 2620 Marquette Place, did submit written input on Eagle Point Park that's been provided to the council.
Thank you, Adrian. All right, we can move on to action items, please.
Action item number 1 is resolution amending lot name for vacating petition, Northeast Iowa Community College Building Entrance Improvement Project.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Russell.
I move to even file and adopt the resolution.
Second by Wethel.
Got a motion by Russell and a second by Wethel. Mike, please.
Thank you. City Engineer Gus Hoyas is recommending City Council adopt the resolution correcting the lot name and previously approved resolutions.
Hang on, Mike, 1 second. Hey, everyone, if I could have silence in the room, please, while we continue business, I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much. Please, Mike.
For the plat and for the vacation of the disposal sale of a portion of Main Street and West 7th Street right-of-way in the city. I concur with the recommendation and respect for the request, Mayor and City Council approval.
Thank you, Mike. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All right, motion here is to receive and file and adopt the resolution. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank. Staver.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Leyendecker.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Action item number 2 is approving a development agreement by and between the City of Dubuque, Iowa and Thunder Valley LLC.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Sprank.
I motion that we receive and file and adopt the resolutions.
Second.
Got a motion by Sprank and a second by Roussel. We've got a little noise in the hallway, but people are filing through the stairs. Mike, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Economic Development Director Jill Connors is recommending City Council to adopt the attached resolution approving a development agreement by and between the City of Dubuque and Thunder Valley LLC, providing for the use of Urban Revitalization District tax abatement. The key elements of the development agreement include the following. Developer will make a capital investment of approximately $12 million to develop the property. Developer must create 72 residential rental units. Developer must construct public sanitary improvements on the property as defined in the agreement. Developer will receive 10 years of tax abatement on 73% of the increased value above the current assessed value of the property. City will prepare an urban revitalization area plan for City Council review at a public hearing following the execution of the development agreement. The city to develop, construct, and maintain at city's expense a temporary solution for sanitary sewer access to allow tenants to occupy the multi-residential buildings upon the issuance of the certificate of occupancy. The temporary solution shall continue until the sanitary sewer design and construction obligations of the developer are allowed by permit from the Iowa Department of Natural Resources. I concur with the recommendation and respectfully request Mayor and City Council approval.
Thank you, Mike. Discussion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Ed.
I guess I have a question about the process of what we just talked about, or you just talked about. And a question that I got from citizen I'm going to ask you tonight is the quality of prior developments by developers, is that part of what's considered as part of this process? Meaning, so we have developers create a project, and we check them out as far as, they're qualified contractors, and do we ever check up on what they have actually produced and then said, this is absolutely maintains the quality of what we were expecting? I guess that's my question.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Jill Connors, Economic Development Director. We do have a process in our department, and it's called the Good Neighbor Inquiry. It's a process that we put together a number of years ago because a concern like that had come up of who are we providing incentives to? Are they on the naughty list, let's say, with our housing department or something? And so we submit a ticket, I'll call it, that gets spread out to maybe 10 or 12 departments, stating, here's the name and address of the proposed applicant for the incentives, to find out if they're in any sort of violation of other requirements from other departments. And then we look at that, and if there aren't any issues, then we proceed.
So there is an after-action report in a way, in a conversational way, with after the project is completed.
Not after it's complete, before we would enter into an agreement. We make sure that they're not in violation with any of the other departments. So for instance, if there were a landlord that weren't in good standing with some of their other properties, because we have them list all of the properties that they own in town. So if there were an issue, say with the housing department, that would be brought to our attention before we entered into agreement.
All right, thank you for that information. Gives me a little information, more than I had, so thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Roussel.
Thank you. This question, I think, is either for you, Mike, or for Jill. The topic of housing incentives has come up at this table several times in the past few months, and this particular type of incentive has clearly been on the table, and this developer has taken advantage of it. But looking forward, Are we going to be, or can we be revisiting this right away at goal setting in light of the state legislative changes and, all the changes that have happened? We've had a lot of apartments being built. What are the occupancy rates, and is this the right kind of housing that we want to have incentives on going forward? I don't know, Mike, if you have any thoughts on the future
Sure,
for
yeah,
this?
sure, I'd like to give you some of my thoughts on that. When the city uses tax increment financing or tax abatement, and in this case, it's tax abatement, with the new state law that exists, the city's not allowed to capture the growth of that tax base when it's released at the end of the abatement period or the end of the tax increment financing period. The city has a hard cap of 2% revenue growth in property taxes, and there are exceptions to that cap. One of the exceptions is new growth. So for instance, if an apartment building like this, $12 million, was built and there was no abatement and no tax increment financing, the city would be able to capture that additional growth to hold down property taxes for, or provide resources for the city to provide services. Once it's put into an abatement district or a tax increment financing district, when that period of time expires, the state won't allow it to be counted as new growth. So it can't go to provide additional resources to provide services. I would say in the last 3 years, since the city council has offered greater incentives to create housing, we have projects either completed, initiated, or proposed to create about 2,400 housing units in the community. Now, that was spurred on by a study that was done by the Greater Dubuque Development Corporation that said we needed additional housing units if we wanted to see population growth. And of course, to have a workforce, you need population growth. Now, even with the growth that's happened over the last 3 years, a recent study completed for the Greater Dubuque Development Corporation says there's still a need for over 1,000 more housing units. Now, that being said, I do plan to recommend to the City Council in the next few months that the city eliminate all incentives, housing incentives outside of the downtown related to market rate housing, either rental or owner occupied, but keep incentives for workforce and affordable housing, rental and owner occupied, even outside of the downtown. I'm also going to recommend that all downtown incentives continue as they currently structured, since they mostly end up in rehabilitated buildings, and when it is infill, the city does not have large infrastructure costs because all the infrastructure already exists in the downtown. The greater downtown density also supports getting downtown commercial storefronts filled and utilizes the excess in certain areas of downtown parking capacity. So there's certain areas where we don't have enough parking, but there's certain areas where we have an overabundance of parking. And so it's great when a building gets rehabilitated and then there's more people to occupy that parking, or if it's a vacant lot that infill gets built, so there's more people to occupy those parking spaces. And it also supports the commercial businesses in the storefronts. So I do plan on bringing that information to the council in the next couple of months to make that recommendation. So for instance, this project, which is a market rate project, if you were to accept my recommendation in the future, we wouldn't be offering incentives for projects like this. Now, that doesn't affect this project. Hopefully you'll approve this tonight. I'm recommending you approve it. This developer, I believe, did all the right things. He knew what the incentives were. He's made an investment and he wants to invest more. I think we ought to support this project tonight, but I also think that you ought to revisit the concept in the future. That doesn't mean that that's going to happen, because you're going to be the ones that decide whether it happens or not. But I will be bringing that to you later this year.
Any more, Mr. Russo?
I had one other addition when you bring that. If there's any way that we could get information on occupancy of the buildings, all these new apartments that have been built, are people filling them up? Or is there waiting lists, or, just what has been the demand for those?
Sure. That's a tougher question to answer because they're private developments. I can tell you anecdotally, what we're being told by the developers is they are filling up. As a matter of fact, we actually saw one developer act on that. The developer that was doing apartment complex on Cedar Cross Road, he actually accelerated his schedule of building his apartments. It was multiple buildings, and he did the next building quicker than he originally had represented because he was having such good luck filling the building up. But we can ask all of them, and it'd be up to them if they'd tell us or not. I don't know, Jill, if anybody, we don't have any, other than anecdotals about that it appears to be going well. I will tell you that every month I meet with the Landlord Association Board of Directors. I've been doing that now probably for about 10 or 12 years. And they have represented to me recently, and most of them are smaller rental owners, and it's mostly existing buildings that they bought that were already apartments. And they have represented to me recently that they are having a harder time getting their units rented. It's taking longer than it used to in the past. Now, I don't remember any of them telling me they can't rent them, but I do know they have told me that it's taking longer for them to get tenants in some of their older buildings that they own in the downtown, and not necessarily just in the downtown, but like up on the bluffs and some of the older properties.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Mr. Leinecker.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I understand we've done a couple studies here, and I know initially it showed that we're 1,100 housing units short, which helps in making these decisions and creating these programs. I do think, though, as I've seen the stats, is relatively speaking, Dubuque hasn't been growing from a population standpoint. And so while we maybe had a need for housing, it appears that, our focus needs to shift from housing to jobs. I think jobs is what ultimately is going to drive our growth. And then the housing will take care of itself as we go forward here. As you mentioned, Mike, on elimination of any incentives on a market rate basis outside of downtown Dubuque. And so I think, as you get jobs, you get growth, you get expansion in the economy, you get GDP growing, and things just naturally start to take care of itself. And so that's where, I'm really struggling with this, and I'm glad to hear that we're going to talk about it. I'm sure we're going to talk about it in goal setting here. But I'm really struggling with just the continued growth in this area and where we're headed with this one. It just seems, and I'm not picking on the developer by any means. I think we need to look at the program overall. I think it's about time, and so I'm happy to hear that. But at some point, we've got to, I think, put a halt to it and understand where we are from a development standpoint and overall units and absorption of those units, so we don't overbuild. Because the way I see it is, if we are not getting people to relocate to Dubuque, we're just shifting people around within Dubuque, which some of that's fine, but we don't want to oversaturate that and create an abundance of housing stock, and especially housing stock just in one specific type, because I do think we've been extremely heavy on apartments versus entry-level homes, condos, things of that nature. So that's where I stand on this. So thanks, Mayor.
Before I come back to you, Mr. Resnick, anybody else first, and then I'll make sure I come back. Ms. Wethel.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. A focus on jobs is incredibly important as we try and grow our population. I don't debate that at all. I will say, as somebody who works in primary care and takes care of folks who are of all stages in life and all income levels, that there's a lot of people that can't find the housing they need in Dubuque. And it's not a number that we, I think, have outgrown yet to have more units. And I don't debate a re-examination of how we deliver these options. I think it is important that we have affordable housing that is owner occupied as far as single family homes. I think that's crucial for us. I would say specifically, just to dial in maybe a specific group of people I hope to capture here in Dubuque, would be people who are graduating from our institutions of higher learning, and they get out and they can't afford an apartment because there's not enough or there's not quality housing. And so although that's getting better, I will share that that's something I have heard, is that we don't have, even if somebody could find a job here, maybe they end up living with their parents. Maybe they end up leaving Dubuque and finding a job elsewhere. And so I think there's all different scenarios in which we still need to capture people to grow our population. If they have nowhere to live that makes it feel like home, I don't think they'll stay. So just my 2 cents. Thanks.
Mr. Saber.
Yeah, I would say, I think during budget, I asked for that information to get some sort of, account from the people that we've already given these incentives to see what their occupancy is like, how fast they're filling up. For sure, the ones on Cedar Cross Road aren't our market rate and are, expensive. A lot of what we've built is, these large complexes. I feel like my job on city council to decide which of these projects should get the incentives. I think we've really went heavy on one side, and for me to, I think, support a future multiple unit apartment, it would be downtown and in the areas that need infill, that are challenging, and that would be, really on the cusp of not happening without it. I don't think this is that scenario here. I don't think I need to wait, for a couple months to decide that on my own. I think I've seen what's been going on, and as Mike said, I own units. I know it's way, way, way down. Other landlords have told me the same thing. So, I think we're going to end up potentially in a bad spot with way too many apartment complexes and not enough potential homes for people to move into. So I think I'm leaning away from this one. So it's my 2 cents.
Mr. Staver? Anyone else? Mr. Resnick, back to you.
All right, well, thank you. And, it's kind of the chicken or the egg, employment or housing and amenities, so we can argue back and forth about which comes first, but the idea they are linked, I think we can agree to that. And the other thing that's important to me, as Mr. Staver talked about, is he'd like to say, as the council, we should have weigh in on this. Well, I have to tell you, we have weighed in this. In fact, these are council-mandated development criteria that other councils have decided on. Now, if we want to decide on something else, so when our team meets with developers, council told them, this is what we'll do. All right, so the developer agreed to that. I think we need to follow through with what we said the city council asked our staff to do, at least until we change it. So because, absolutely, we change things if we need to change things. And it seems that we're getting to that point where we would like to talk about it, maybe decide on a different type of thing that we need to offer our developers. But as of now, our staff has worked hard to bring us what we asked for as a council. And so I have my own ideas about how we might change things as well. But as far that's maybe a couple months or a couple weeks or a couple days away from what we can talk about. Right now, we have a developer who has done everything that the city council has asked them to do. I think We just need to say, well, this is what we said, we're good for our word, and then we can take the next step as we go and continue to be good to our word. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So the one thing that I will absolutely agree with in what we're hearing here is that we really need to gather some new data. It's getting uncomfortable to make these decisions because things are getting too anecdotal. We're starting to hear like, well, you know, there's some apartments we're hearing some apartments are hard to lease up. We think that we're hearing that there's too many apartments. We think that we're hearing that there's not enough. I really think it's time that we go back to Greater Dubuque Development Corporation, our partners, anybody who can help us to make sure that we measure as accurately as possible what is our situation now. I don't think any of us necessarily expected the incentives to work so well. It's a great problem to have, honestly. I mean, the incentives really worked well. We were asked to provide more incentives for more housing, and within 3 years, boom, we got a ton of housing. Now, it was a specific type of housing. It was a lot of multifamily, larger apartment complexes, some smaller apartment complexes, local developers, out of community developers. So, great, we had that happen. But I do think we need to revisit this now, and we need to try and gather as much good data as we possibly can to be able to make the best decision possible. Mike, I do think that in the near term, having this change that you're suggesting is a good first step, but it doesn't sound to me like we're going to have all that data to be able to make that decision and cement it. So I'd really like to, if we're going to make that change, I think I would support that going forward when you bring that recommendation to us. But I do want to make sure that we have some good data to be able to move forward with over the next year or two as we think about what the incentives really need to look like based on what the real occupancy rates are and as much good information as we can get. Because I do hear anecdotal on both sides. I heard it here tonight, but I hear it when we talk to people in the community too. It really depends on who you're talking to. So as much as we can to be able to make a data-driven decision on this in the long term, I think is going to be really important. I think we're starting to have a feeling that we need to make some changes to this, and we also have an incentive to make changes based on state law. So the state law is a big deal. The change that we're going to have coming in January, we need to make sure that we are setting ourselves up successfully for that. So, but as far as tonight goes, I have to agree with those of my colleagues that I've heard tonight that we have this incentive in place. The developer came forward. I don't have any good evidence right now that we don't need these housing units, that really speaks to me that says absolutely don't do this. So I will respectfully disagree with those that might be against it, but I'm going to vote for this as we move forward. That's going to be my position on it. Anything further before we call for the vote? Okay. Well, the motion here before us is to, thank you very much, Jill, is to receive and file and adopt this resolution. Adrian, will you call the roll, please?
Sprank.
Aye.
Staver.
Nay.
Wethel.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Leindecker.
Nay.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
That motion passes 5-2.
Action item number 3 is North American Trainer Association Formation Flight Training at Dubuque Regional Airport video.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Resnick.
I would receive and file and view the video.
Second by Leindecker.
Motion by Resnick, second by Leindecker. Cool. Let's watch a video, please, Eric.
To it. I just get a lot of satisfaction out of this formation flying. I really do.
So we're here at NATA, known as North American Trainers Association. So pretty much what the event is, they'll come here, they'll practice their formation flying here for about a week, and then they head up to Oshkosh.
This is an annual event, and one of its primary missions is to train new guys or guys requesting training or requal. But the other important one is getting ready to fly a big mass formation. It's important because, well, for safety, number one, if people are going to do this, they need to come and do it on a regular basis because it's a perishable skill, formation flying is.
Part of the reason that they chose Dubuque as the location is for it. There's a lot more space for them to be able to do stuff. It's a towered environment, so it's a lot safer for them to go through this.
The airspace itself, if you did it at an international airport or even a big airport, it's hard to fit in all these airplanes in and out. My experience here at Dubuque has always been positive. I mean, number one, the flying, the community, the hotel, the restaurants.
We bring in like pretty much all of our staff to help out with whatever needs that the pilots would need. We take care of all their parking, all their hangering, and all the fueling of the aircraft.
1 year in 2018, we had a 42-ship flight. We all trained for it here in Dubuque. Once you fly with them and get to know them, they become lifelong friends, so it's a sort of reunion in a way.
That is such a cool event every single year. It's actually one of my favorite things because you'll hear them flying over the house and you'll be like, oh, it's that week. And you get to go outside and watch them fly over and over again, back and forth all over the city. It's a great time. So I really appreciate NATA coming to Dubuque and appreciate everything the airport does that week to keep on coming back. I know they love it here, so that's a wonderful thing to have. And thank you very much for that video from the communications department. All right, motion was to receive and file. Watch video. Adrian will call roll, please.
Sprang.
Aye.
Staver.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Lyon-Decker.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Roussel.
That motion passes 7-0.
Next are council member reports.
I'm sure we've done nothing in the last 2 weeks. None of us. Yeah. Ms. Roussel.
Just a reminder that on Saturday, August 29th at 8:30, the Friends of Dubuque Parks are having a park enhancement program, and we will provide tools and gloves, and come and join us and have fun.
And if Ms. Roussel is organizing it, get ready to work. That's the one thing we know. Yeah, Mr.
Real
Reddick.
quick, I'll just touch on the Field of Dreams game. So the minor league game and the major league game were last week, and I just think it was a great opportunity to put us on, not only the local stage, but the national stage and world stage once again on having the Major League Baseball games return. And we were fortunate enough to have the minor league team return this year, which was a AAA game, which was great publicity. And then I don't know if many people know, but Wednesday night, so between the minor league and the major league game, there was a high school all-star game out there from the top high school prospects that were in attendance. So they got to experience Dubuque and the Midwest region, which was really cool. I don't know exactly what all states they're from, but I think they were from all over the entire country. So just a great opportunity to highlight Dubuque County, and us as a region. And obviously they announced the game for next year, so it kind of continues to build momentum, and it's very exciting. I think the important part is it's really an opportunity for us to have a postcard, a billboard out there, like I said, as wide as worldwide. But I think the youth tournament component that they continue to do out there is really the key component here in youth education and getting those youngsters out for the tournaments and for all that experience. And so I think that all of it just continues to build momentum, and it's very exciting for all of us at Dubuque to be able to be a part of it. So,
Thanks, Mr. Lyon-Decker. Yeah, Mr. Sprang.
Thank you. So look at my calendar. So since the last time we met, I have volunteered for the National Night Out, which happened at Allison Henderson. It's really nice to see all those kids come together, enjoy that evening. Of course, the police department kind of sponsors that, so they get to know the police department. There was a helicopter that took off and landed, which really excited a lot of the kids. Later that week, Crescent Community Health Center had their 20th anniversary celebration. And then also that Friday, our Mayor Pro Tem gave a lovely welcoming to folks on Art on the River. So if you want to see some new art, that's down by the Mississippi Riverwalk. It's gorgeous. I like the turtles one, so I'll let you go find that one. And then the next day, I volunteered at the Dubuque Fest, which is always fun, just talking about folks from coming into town, looking at all the art, as well as a food giveaway. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Resnick?
Well, I tell you
So
what.
I figured you're going.
I had two things downwritten as Mayor Pro Tem, but no, there was more than two, so I had to keep writing. You're a busy man, and
Apparently I leave a lot because you're constantly.
well, no, you leave a couple times, but you leave quite awake when you're not here. So anyway, I was Dubuque Fest. I got to choose as it said the mayor's choice. I didn't even call you on this. I just made it, so I hope you don't mind
That was
that.
my full expectation, just so you know. Yes,
Okay, well, anyway, there were so many wonderful things. First of all, Dubuque Fest was well attended. It was well done as far as set up, and It had so many great volunteers, and yeah, I just loved to be there. And the weather was, when I was there, is good. I'm not taking credit for that, but I tell you what, it was wonderful to be down there. And the art on the river, there's some really interesting, my wife and I just meandered down there and saw so many things when it wasn't raining. And it really is beautiful this year. And I was also able to represent the mayor and the citizens of Dubuque for the EPA Brownfields welcome. And again, it was in the paper, so if you get the paper, you know what I'm talking about. But it's really something important to make sure that the underneath of any kind of economic development, everything from the ground down is in good shape for these businesses. And the brownfields help us out with that. The other thing I wanted to talk about is I'm on the board of Four Mounds, and they have had an unbelievably successful year. And their mission is such a high mission for helping people help themselves. And they're doing some fantastic things, a lot of planning, growing, making a difference in folks' world. So I wanted to mention those things, that I did so many things that just filled my heart these last couple of weeks. And so it was a good couple of weeks. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, thank you very much. And just so you know, when you are acting mayor, you do take credit for the weather.
Oh, okay.
So just make sure that you do that from this point forward. Let me just say for a moment, I appreciate you stepping forward so much. I actually have been traveling a little bit more this year than in past years, both for mayor reasons and personal reasons. So I do appreciate you stepping in at all those times because you're actually leaving the role of mayor pro tem coming up soon because we rotate it at the desk. So we will have a new mayor pro tem. I'll just let that be a surprise when the time comes. So it's on a list that just rotates automatically. So that's the way it goes. Ms. Wethel, but thank you.
Yeah. So I had the opportunity to meet with the NAACP Housing Commission to discuss needs as it relates to those who are unhoused in our community. Also attended the Crescent anniversary event, which was so celebratory. And as somebody who had the opportunity to work at Crescent in the early days, it's incredibly rewarding to see where they are and where they are going. So hats off to all of them. I also had the chance to go out to Field of Dreams last week, and I have to say, if you believe in divine intervention, the day of the MLB game, that was there because the weather was not looking good. The folks who work at Travel Dubuque coordinated with MLB. I just have to say hats off. We had, I don't even know how many volunteers from the community, the county, the region come out. Everyone was so friendly and really did a great job of representing Dubuque. At one point, I heard a woman walk through the corn and say, "Can you smell the corn?" I just, it might sound cheesy, but people were really in a place in which they felt at home and they felt joy. So hats off to everybody.
Thanks, Ms. Wethel. All right, well, the only things I'll mention are, first of all, welcome to all the college students who are in town. I know it's that time of year, everybody's coming in, so welcome to you. We look forward to welcoming you in person when we get the chance to see you at Farmers Market and Night Market and all the different places we're all going to hang out together, so we're glad you're here. It was great to welcome the EPA Region 7 Administrator Jim Macy. Thank you very much for offering that official welcome in the morning. I was able to spend some time with them in the afternoon, and it was great to be able to have that opportunity to have the EPA represented so strongly here in Dubuque again. We show very well when they come because we've done a lot of work with brownfield funding. And finally, you mentioned cheesy in the Field of Dreams. I literally cried during the national anthem. That place is just so special. And even watching it on Netflix, you just get that feeling. And I'm so glad for the work that we've all done as a region to make that game such a success and make that place such a success. We have a closed session, so that'll be our last thing of the night here. I'll take a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Wethel.
I move to go into closed session according to Chapter 21.5, 1CJ Code of Iowa to discuss pending litigation and purchase or sale of real estate.
Second by Linedecker.
Got a motion by Wethel and a second by Linedecker. For the record, the attorneys that the City Council will consult with on the issues to be discussed in closed session is City Attorney Crowner Brumwell and Assistant City Attorney Jason Lehman. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprang. Staver. Wethel.
Aye.
Resnick. Linedecker.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
That motion passes 7-0. We are in closed session.